Chapter 25-21. Young Eunuch Li clenched his teeth in hatred, but he couldn't move at all. Kaichi went outside and called 2 Eastern Palace guards in. Without saying a word, they lifted young Eunuch Li up and pressed him down on the bench. The planks fell with a crackling sound. Young Eunuch Li was forcefully pressed down, and the planks fell on his body. He lost all his dignity, and his face turned red as he screamed. Young Crown Princess was dressed in red, and her features were exquisite and unadorned. She walked out of the side hall and stood on the long steps, looking down at young Eunuch Li, who was being punished, with an expressionless face. There were many palace maids and eunuchs standing in the courtyard, but none of them dared to make a sound. They all cautiously lowered their heads and looked down. After 50 strikes, the 2 guards dragged little Eunuch Li from the bench and threw him on the ground without any force. Then they raised their hands in salute to the Crown Prince Consort and quietly retreated to the side. Arbor coldly looked at the person lying on the ground. She formed a hand seal and waved her hand, immediately undoing the binding of the body-securing talisman. Young Eunuch Li found that he could move, and immediately struggled to stand up. He glared at Arbor and angrily said with a dark face, "What is the meaning of this?" "Bring the food out," Arbor said coldly. Kaichi and Kaishio hurriedly directed a group of palace maids to bring out the dozens of dishes on the table. Arbor casually picked up a plate of fried pumpkin and threw it at young Eunuch Li's face. Young Eunuch Li was shocked. He subconsciously leaned to the side and avoided the plate attack. Who knew that this young crown princess would throw the plates at his face one after another? Plates of porridge, noodles, and soup splattered all over his face, making young Eunuch Li battered and exhausted. The palace maids who came with young Eunuch Li were already trembling in fear. They knelt on the ground and didn't dare to raise their heads. Young Eunuch Li was about to explode in anger. "You, let him eat. Clean it all up," Arbor said coldly. There was no warmth in his words. This little crown princess looked at little Eunuch Li with mockery and coldness. She slid her finger and ordered the 2 guards standing at the side to go forward and escort little Eunuch Li to eat the food on the ground clean. Congee noodles and all kinds of exquisite snacks, buns, and pastries were all stuffed into little Eunuch Li's mouth by the 2 guards. Wretch! Little Eunuch Li felt that his mouth was full of something cold. Once it entered his mouth, he felt nauseous and wanted to vomit. How could the 2 Eastern Palace guards give him a chance to vomit? She kept stuffing food into his mouth until Eunuch Li's eyes rolled back and his limbs trembled. When Zhao Tingdong heard the news and rushed over, little Eunuch Li had already been tormented by the 2 guards to the point that he almost fainted. Zhao Tingdong hurriedly stepped forward and bowed to Arbor. "This servant Zhao Tingdong greets the crown princess." The young crown princess looked at him expressionlessly. "Go and call over the head eunuch of the kitchen." "Yes." Zhao Tingdong immediately responded and sent a capable young eunuch to summon the head eunuch of the kitchen. Zhao Tingdong usually had a good relationship with the head eunuch of the kitchen, Eunuch Sun. At this time, he could only secretly break out in a cold sweat. From the looks of it, the young crown princess was quite angry. This matter probably couldn't be settled peacefully. Chapter 25-22. Eunuch Sun was nearly 60 years old and had a stocky build. When he walked, he looked like a tiger stirring up the wind. After hearing the summons from the Eastern Palace, Eunuch Sun was also at a loss. However, he did not dare to carelessly neglect this crown prince consort and hurried to the Eastern Palace with the young eunuch leading the way. As soon as he entered the garden of the Eastern Palace, he saw little Eunuch Li being dragged to the ground by 2 guards. The eunuch's stomach was already bulging from the food he was stuffing into his mouth. His heart inexplicably sank, and a layer of cold sweat immediately formed on his palms. He hurriedly went forward and greeted, "This servant Sun Ba greets the crown princess." The young crown princess glanced at him coldly. "Kaishio." At this moment, Kaishio completely understood the young crown princess's meaning, and also knew why the crown princess was angry. At this moment, she was also trembling with fear, because she and Kaichi hadn't noticed this problem previously. If the crown princess wanted to hold them accountable, then it would be due to negligence. Now, she could only quickly atone for her mistake. She took a deep breath and hurriedly walked over with a bowl of bird's nest porridge. She handed the bowl to Eunuch Sun, the manager of the kitchen. Eunuch Sun, all the breakfast that the kitchen sent over just now was completely cold, just like this bird's nest porridge. Please take a look. That can't be. Eunuch Sun was shocked. He took the bowl and touched it with his hand. It was indeed so cold that there wasn't a trace of heat. The weather was so cold. Yet the crown princess had to put these cold things into her mouth? The weather was extremely cold, but sweat had seeped out of Eunuch Sun's forehead. He hurriedly knelt on the ground and explained, "Crown Princess, please understand. This servant can guarantee that the food was definitely warm when it came out of the kitchen. Moreover, on the way to the Eastern Palace, we used insulated food boxes to ensure that the food sent to each palace and courtyard was warm. Therefore, the reason why the food was so cold was definitely because someone had tampered with it. Was it the cold utensils that caused the food to become cold faster?" Eunuch Sun's gaze was filled with disgust as he looked coldly at little Eunuch Lee, who was lying on the ground. Just now he had felt that this person was a little pitiful, but now, it seemed that he deserved it. He was the one who wanted to offend the crown princess, so why drag him down with him? She was going to die because of him. "Little Lee, what is the meaning of this?" Eunuch Sun said angrily. "Why are you doing this?" Eunuch Lee Jr. straightened his neck and ate a stomach full of cold food. Now that his stomach was rumbling, he said impatiently, "Eunuch Sun, what did this servant do? This servant is just here to deliver the food. Even if the food is cold, can't this servant bring it back and reheat it? Is it really worth it? Do you really think you're the high and mighty crown princess? She's just a woman who was brought up from the lower star area, and is the crown prince's plaything. She's just an unpresentable thing. She doesn't know how to look at the big picture. She's so arrogant that she wants the whole world to know." Slap. A gust of wind from a palm came from afar and landed heavily on Xiao Li's face. Eunuch Lee Jr. was hit so hard that 2 of his teeth fell out. He looked back with a face full of horror. Emolian viciously strode in from outside the atrium, like a gust of wind. Without allowing for any explanation, he stomped on this person's ribs more than a dozen times, each kick landing heavily on this person's weak spot. The pain caused little Eunuch Lee Jr. to spit out a few mouthfuls of blood. He rolled on the ground and howled as he trembled. "What is this? How dare you be so impudent in the Eastern Palace?" Chapter 25-23. Emolian stepped forward and grabbed the little fellow's hand. She coldly glared at the eunuch rolling on the ground and sternly reprimanded, "Zhao Tingdong. Why yes, this servant is here, this servant is here." Zhao Tingdong was so frightened by the crown prince's stern rebuke that his legs turned to jelly. "What are you doing? Letting a lowly servant like this run amok in the Eastern Palace? Do you still need this crown prince to teach you how to handle this kind of matter?" "Why yes." Zhao Tingdong quickly nodded in response and instructed the 2 guards beside him. Hurry and take him away." A harsh glint flitted through Zhao Tingdong's eyes, and he couldn't help but ridicule little Eunuch Lee in his mind. This servant actually dared to point at the crown princess's nose and scold her for taking advantage of him? Who exactly was the one taking advantage of her without knowing it? "Take him away. Your Highness the Crown Prince, please calm your anger, Crown Princess." Another voice came from outside the door. Eunuch Lee, the eunuch in charge of the Internal Affairs Department, had also come after hearing the news. His heart skipped a beat when he saw the situation in the court, and he hastily rushed forward to salute. "Your Highness, please calm your anger. This is all a misunderstanding. Little Lee didn't mean to offend the Crown Princess. The Crown Princess is benevolent and magnanimous, so she definitely won't bicker with a little servant like him." What did he mean by that? He was setting a trap for Jojo. If she dealt with this little servant today, she wouldn't be the benevolent and magnanimous Crown Princess. Unfortunately, setting a trap was useless. Sir Jojo had never been one to follow the rules. Since he was young, Arbor expressionlessly tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Kill him." A black shadow abruptly descended from the sky and slit little Eunuch Lee's throat without any explanation. After killing him, that person acted as if nothing had happened and turned to kneel on one knee with a grin. He said loudly, "Huifeng greets Your Highness the Crown Prince and Crown Princess." Emolian nodded. It was easier to use people on her side. Do you have any leads on Wuxia and the others' whereabouts? Emolian couldn't help but think of a question when she saw Huifeng, Wuxia and the others, along with Situ Yi and the rest. Ever since they followed Jojo to Shuntian Prefecture, according to Jojo, they had completely disappeared, like bubbles disappearing without a trace. Yes, there are clues. Huifeng cracked a smile. They've had great encounters. Right now, half of them are in Fire-Smelting City, and the other half are in Icebound City cultivating. Sir Jojo looked over curiously and asked, Flame City? No, Crown Princess, it's Fire-Smelting City. Huifeng felt that there was a great need to educate his Crown Princess. The 4 great cities that transcend the 3 provinces. Glory City, Shadow City, Inferno City, and Icebound City. Arba replied with an, oh, and didn't say anything else. Huifeng's mouth involuntarily twitched. Wasn't the Crown Princess the least bit curious? Why were her companions in Fire-Smelting City and Icebound City? Didn't she want to know what kind of encounters they'd had in Fire-Smelting City and Icebound City? Why did the super calm Crown Princess look a bit adorable with her stoic expression? Emolian glanced at Huifeng. Give me a detailed report later. Oh. Huifeng drooped his head. No wonder the Crown Princess wasn't anxious at all. Because she knew very well that Prince Emo would definitely tell her everything he knew after reading the report. Moreover, since Huifeng said that they'd had great encounters, what was there to be anxious about? Their days must have been pretty good. Chapter 25-24. The 3 of them were talking among themselves, and had long abandoned the bystanders. However, Eunuch Lee from the Internal Affairs Department was so angry that he nearly fainted. Even now, he still felt his heart trembling, and he couldn't catch his breath. The Crown Princess actually didn't give him any face at all, and killed his godson just like that. After killing him, she acted as if nothing had happened, and didn't even look at him. Li Hongchuan was so angry that he was trembling. When he lowered his head and saw Xiaoli lying in a pool of blood, his vision turned black and he felt dizzy. This was Mu Estate Tinglan Courtyard. Eldest young master. Eldest young master. You can't just barge in like this, eldest young master. Scram! Mu Xingqian kicked the maidservant in front of him, causing her to stumble and crash into the courtyard's door. He strode into the room. Mu Jingrui also hurriedly followed and advised, Xingqian, we still don't understand the actual situation. Don't get angry first and see what it is. Hey, who are you people? How can you barge into Mrs. Boudoir? Madame Li had just returned home from a tooth feast. As soon as she entered, she saw 2 tall men barging into her Tinglan's small courtyard. Madame Li hurriedly glared at them and angrily shouted. Mu Xingqian pursed his lips and swept Nei Li to the side with a flick of his sleeve. With a dark expression, he quickly walked to the boudoir in the courtyard and kicked without any explanation. Boom! Xiaoing Chun, who was lying on the bed and groaning, jumped in fright and hastily poked her head out from the canopy. She saw a tall and straight man walking against the light to her bed. When she saw this youth's appearance, Xiaoing Chun's eyes couldn't help but light up, and a dazed expression appeared in her eyes. Who was this handsome man in front of her? This was a certain young master from the Mu family, right? Was he here to see Ying Chun? Xiaoing Chun had the same problem again. She couldn't take her eyes off Mu Xingqian. When Mu Xingqian saw her, his handsome face turned even darker. He quickly walked up to her and unceremoniously pulled her down from the bed. Mu Jingrui hurriedly called out from behind, Xingqian, Xingqian. Who are you? How dare you pretend to be my younger sister? Without another word, Mu Xingqian gave Xiaoing Chun 2 tight slaps. Poor Xiaoing Chun. Her swollen face had yet to recover. This time, it was really an injury on top of an injury. Feeling the pain on her face, she cried out involuntarily. Moreover, she felt that the scene in front of her was extremely familiar. Once, there was a very handsome man who barged into her court. After seeing her, he beat her up without any explanation. She still hadn't fully recovered from the injuries on her body. Concubineshire had sent people to take a look many times. Every time she thought of Concubineshire saying that she had missed this banquet, missed that meeting, missed this handsome young master, missed that mighty and domineering young general, her heart felt like it was dripping blood. How many opportunities would she miss to show her face? How many opportunities would she miss to climb up the social ladder? Big brother? Xiao Yingchuan's mind turned very quickly. When she heard how Mu Xingqian addressed him, she immediately understood that this person in front of her should be Arbor's long-lost big brother. She hastily called out, "Big brother, don't hit big brother." "Who's your big brother?" Mu Xingqian threw her to the ground and reached out to summon a lightning talisman to strike her. Mu Jingrui, wait Xingqian. There was one more thing. Chapter 25-25. Boom! A bolt of spiritual lightning struck down. Xiao Yingchuan's eyes bulged, and she let out a miserable howl before falling to the ground with a thud. Shi Huixin hurried over. When she rushed in with her men, she saw a disheveled Xiao Yingchuan rolling back and forth on the ground, howling miserably. She was so angry that her nose was about to become crooked. After waiting for about 8 to 10 days, this woman's injuries were finally mostly healed. She originally wanted to bring her to Madame Zhongli's plum blossom banquet tomorrow, and let her show her face in front of everyone. But she didn't expect to encounter this kind of incident. She quickly went up to stop Mu Xingqian, and gave Nanny Zhu a look to check on Xiao Yingchuan's injuries. Nanny Zhu flipped Xiao Yingchuan over to take a look, and her face almost became crooked from anger. Xiao Yingchuan's face was as black as coal after being struck by lightning, and her entire head and face were covered in blood. She looked even more miserable than a few days ago. "Eldest young master, how could you do this? That's your younger sister. How could you be so ruthless? Even if the two of you didn't grow up together, can you bear to cut off your blood ties? You're so ruthless. Look at how badly you've beaten your younger sister." Shi Huixin was filled with anger, and had nowhere to vent, so she gave Mu Xingqian a good lecture. "Someone, throw this imposter out of the Mu residence. Don't let her take half a step into the Mu residence again." Mu Xingqian didn't care about concubine Shi's attitude, and directly gave the order. Two Mu residence's shadow guards immediately came out from behind, and dragged the trembling Xiao Yingchuan up. "Ah, big brother, what are you doing? Big brother." Xiao Yingchuan screamed, and hugged the leg of the stool tightly, unwilling to let go. Madame Li rushed in and sat on the doorstep howling, "Ayo, everyone come and take a look. The Mu residence's eldest young master is going to chase out the young miss, who was left stranded outside. Ayo, there's no justice in this world. The Mu residence is committing murder and arson. Shut up." When Mu Qingya rushed over, she saw such a mess. Madame Li sat on the doorstep, and howled while slapping her feet. The eldest son Mu Xingqian was angered by this old woman's shrewish behavior. His handsome face turned slightly green. Seeing this situation, she was so angry that the blue veins on her forehead almost popped out. She shouted at the group of old maids accompanying her, "What are you waiting for? Why aren't you gagging this old woman and dragging her out? Ah, what are you doing? Are you guys trying to murder me for money? Ouch." Madame Li was still howling when she was slapped in the face by an older female servant. Madame Li's head was slightly tilted back, and her mouth was immediately filled with the taste of blood. Xiao Yingchuan was also scared silly. She hurriedly pounced over to hug concubine Shi's leg and wailed, concubine mother, save me. Big brother can't tolerate me. Auntie, woo. I can't live anymore, auntie. Big brother wants to kill me. Aha. Shut up. Mu Qingya said angrily. Shut up. If you were to let these shrews spout nonsense, would the young master's reputation still be intact? If word got out, people would think that even the young master of the Mu residence couldn't tolerate his biological younger sister. A cold glint shot out of Mu Xingqian's eyes, and he turned to glare at concubine Shi. Shi Huixin, I don't know what you want to do by bringing such an impostor home. But if you want to harm my younger sister, even if I don't want my life, I won't let you off. The 10th watch ended. Chapter 25-26. Concubine Shi smiled awkwardly. Look at what eldest young master is saying. Why would concubine harm eldest young master's younger sister? Look, isn't this? Don't think that everyone is a fool. Mu Xingqian flung away concubine Shi's outstretched arm, and looked at her coldly. You must know very well what this woman's identity is. Shi Huixin carelessly stroked her hair, and said with a smile, Eldest young master must be joking. Concubine is merely bringing Miss back from Seekong planet to reunite with our family. I don't want others to misunderstand my good intentions. In all honesty, Concubine really doesn't have any selfish motives. Mu Qingya frowned and said, Concubine, sure. Help Miss to the bed first. Xingqian, come with me. Mu Xingqian's handsome face was cold as he followed Mu Qingya out of Tinglan's small courtyard. Mu Qingya sighed and turned around with a rather solemn expression. Xingqian, your actions this time were truly too reckless and impulsive. What good will this do for your reputation? If this matter were to spread, what would it look like? Those outside who don't know the truth will only think that you can't even tolerate a younger sister who has led a wandering life for many years. Mu Xingqian said angrily, How can she be my younger sister? That slut is simply an imposter. I won't admit to her identity. Mother, why is it like this? Mu Xingqian couldn't help but grumble inwardly. Why didn't Concubine sure immediately chase her out the day you brought her back? Even if others don't know, Mother should know that this person is an imposter. Xingqian. Mu Qingya shook her head and said with a wry smile. The day Concubine sure brought her back, she spoke so confidently and solemnly. She even paid a visit to your father, and found 2 more witnesses to prove it. We can only discuss this matter at length. If we want to chase this imposter out of the house, we still have to find some evidence. What evidence? Wouldn't father know? Mu Xingqian sneered. Wouldn't it be clear once we take out the bloodline talisman? We'll know whether or not she's of the Mu family bloodline with a test. Mu Qingya was slightly taken aback. Then she revealed an ecstatic expression. Right. Why didn't Mother think of that? That fake would naturally not be able to pass the test of the bloodline talisman. Mu Qingya said with a smile. However, I need to go to your father personally and have a good talk with him. Go back to your own courtyard first and wait for my notice. Mu Xingqian thought for a moment and nodded slightly. On the other side, Mo Lian had already finished flipping through all the fortuitous encounters of Situ Yi, Wei Nanfeng, and Yu Xiao. It had to be said that this group of people was really lucky. Coincidentally, they were picked up by the city lords of Fire-Smelting City and Ice-Sealed City, who had gone out to train, and brought back to raise them. So don't always say that Jojo is lucky. There are many people who are really lucky. From the looks of it, Jojo's little bit of luck was nothing. If the heavenly Tao was here, he would definitely give this fellow a tight slap. Bah, your little bit of luck is just short of reaching the heavens. Little bit of luck? If this is little bit of luck, then there are really no people with great luck in this world. After flipping through the information, Mo Lian looked at the recent events in Dragon Flame City, big and small. When her finger stopped at a few documents titled, The Mu Family's Wandering Girl Returns. Chapter 25-27. Mu Qiao has returned home. The Mu family's long-lost Miss Mu Qiao has finally returned home. Mo Lian's eyes could not help but narrow dangerously when her finger paused on a row of similar information. This Mu Qiao couldn't be the one he was thinking of, right? He reached out to flip open the neatly arranged information, and quickly skimmed through it. Mu Estate's Gilded Garden. Mu Qingya carefully wrung a wet handkerchief, and gently handed it to her husband, Mu Jingfeng, who was sitting beside her. A faint smile appeared on Mu Jingfeng's grave and stern face. He took the handkerchief and wiped his face before casually asking, I heard that Xingqian went to Tinglan's courtyard to cause trouble today? Mu Qingya sighed. This child is still too impulsive. I've already lectured him. Husband, don't scold him anymore. You're always protecting him. Mu Jingfeng glared at her. He's the Mu family's young master, and someone who will bear the responsibility of the entire Mu family in the future. We can't indulge him too much. Mu Qingya smiled. Look at what you're saying, husband. Xingqian doesn't need us to worry about him. He's very sensible. There's a reason for today's matter. If it weren't for Concubine, sure, Mu Qingya could not help but bite her lip when she saw Mu Jingfeng's gaze drifting over, swallowing the latter half of her sentence. After contemplating for a while, she finally could not help but speak up again. Husband, Xingqian suggested to me today that he wanted to use the bloodline talisman to test that young lady in Tinglan's courtyard. Mu Jingfeng glared at her and said in displeasure, Nonsense. You want to open the ancestral hall to ask for a bloodline talisman for such an insignificant matter? Mu Qingya tried to persuade him. Master, how can this be a trivial matter? This is also a major matter that will shake the ancestral bloodline. I think you've also been muddled by Xingqian's words. You believe him when he says that person isn't his younger sister? There can't be any mistake with someone brought over from Seacombe planet. Mu Jingfeng casually waved his hand. There's no need to mention this matter again. He's been running around all this time and hasn't seen any improvement in his cultivation. Tell him to go into seclusion and cultivate properly. Don't always think about those nonsensical things of the secular world. Master. Enough. Mu Jingfeng nonchalantly swung his sleeves and got up to leave. His grave and stern face was abnormally cold. An hour later, Mu Xingqian received the news. He sat in his study room and crushed a jade porcelain brush washer. Young master, Madam said that this matter cannot be rushed. She will find an opportunity to persuade the master again. The servant standing in front of the desk said with a trembling voice. This was the first time he had seen his young master so angry, as if he wanted to tear everything in front of him apart. He knew at a glance that that bitch wasn't his daughter. Mu Xingqian said angrily. As he said, with his father's eyesight as the head of the Mu family for so many years, what could be hidden from his eyes? Young master. The servant was almost scared to death. He's the one who wants to keep the fake. It was him who did not want to see Jojo. That's why he didn't want to open the ancestral hall and experiment with the bloodline talisman. That coward. What did my Jojo do wrong? Why should she bear all of this? Young master. The servant looked like he was about to faint. Please, please. Could he not scold the head of the household like this in front of a tiny ant like him? Life was so precious. He really didn't want to die so early. Chapter 25-28. This man would rather raise an impostor as his daughter than see his own daughter. Mu Xingqian clenched his fists tightly and spat. Extremely stupid. He should have known that he could only do things that the man agreed to. How could concubine sure have the guts to bring an impostor into the Mu family? It was obvious that the man agreed to it himself. He did it on purpose, deliberately turning a blind eye and deliberately suppressing the fact that the impostor's origins were unknown. Only in this way would the Mu family not pursue the origin of the counterfeit goods and accept the existence of the counterfeit goods. Mu Xingqian was so angry that his eyes turned red. Coward! Even if you don't want to see Jojo, you don't have to make an impostor to annoy yourself. He doesn't mind spending money to raise a slut, but I do mind that the slut's existence dirties the entire court. The manservant lowered his head and completely treated himself as heir. He hoped that the young master would let him go. He didn't hear anything. I won't let this impostor occupy my sister's position. Mu Xingqian's eyes revealed a cold glint. Young master, what are you doing? The servant really wanted to slap his own mouth. Why the hell was he stuttering when he spoke? Don't be a coward. He had to advise his young master not to court death. In this situation, it was obvious that he was going against the master. That was courting death. Zhengdu, what are you thinking about? The page boy looked at Mu Xingqian in confusion and hurriedly said, Young master, I am thinking of how to persuade you to put down your butcher's knife. Mu Xingqian glanced at him. Butcher's knife? Yes. Don't think that I don't know. Young master, you want to sneak into Ting Lan's courtyard in the dark and directly slit that girl's throat. Mu Xingqian sneered. You know your master quite well. Why yes. The page boy hated that he couldn't slap himself again. Who asked you to speak so much and spit out everything in your heart? Young master, don't be rash. The page boy hurriedly hugged Mu Xingqian's leg and cried, Young master, let's not do such impulsive things. If the owner of Ting Lan's courtyard is dead, you will be the first suspect. After all, we just had a conflict with them. If word gets out that he's the murderer of his younger sister, his reputation won't be good either. Don't doubt it. I did it. Mu Xingqian sneered. However, when he went to Ting Lan's small courtyard again, he found that it was already empty. After careful inquiry, it turned out that the fake had been taken away by Shi Yinyang to Wulong Garden to recuperate. Recuperating was just a pretense. The main reason was to prevent this fake from being killed in Tinglan's courtyard for no reason. Mu Xingchen sneered. Concubine sure was really worried sick about this fake. At the door of the study, a small head poked out and then shrank back. Emolienne could not help but laugh. She put down the documents in her hands and said softly, I've already seen you. Why are you still hiding? The little fellow bounced inside in a trot, and Emolienne stretched out his arms to carry her into his embrace. Hungry? The little girl nodded and looked up at him with a pair of round eyes. I really want to eat hot roasted sweet potatoes right now. Okay, I'll roast a few for you. Emolienne reached out to pinch her little nose and said with a grin, What a greedy little kitten. With a wave of her hand, she took out a small stove and 4 to 5 sweet potatoes from her inner world. Chapter 25-29. Emolienne was now completely in his element when it came to cooking. This simple roasted sweet potato was naturally very familiar to him. As long as he controlled the heat well, he could just place the sweet potato on the stove and flip it over to roast it after a while. What were you looking at just now? Sir Jojo asked curiously. He reached out to grab the information he placed on the side. Oh, is it information on Situ E and the others? Did they really go to Fire Refining City? And half. It was also a coincidence that they went to Fire Refining City and Icebound City. But it's also because their talents are pretty good. Arbor nodded his small head. Those little fellows' talents were naturally pretty good. If they had lived in the Divine Province, since birth in a place with such dense spiritual energy, their current strength would probably have broken through to great spiritualists long ago. However, they came more than half a year earlier than her. So presumably, they were no longer rookies like great mystic cultivators. At the thought of meeting them again, and being able to see her little fellows rapidly improve their cultivation, Miss Chiao couldn't help but faintly look forward to it. It's not information on Situ E and the others. Sir Jojo casually picked up a piece of information on Mu Chiao's return, and stared at it for a while like he had seen a ghost. There was a fake who was taken back to the Mu family. Emolienne sneered and raised his hand to take the piece of information from Arbor's hand before casually tossing it to the side. The Mu family is such a large family, so they definitely know whether it's their own bloodline or not. It's impossible for them to be so easily confused, unless that muddle-headed patriarch of theirs doesn't wish for me to return in the first place, and would rather deceive himself by raising an impostor. Xiao Mu curled her lips coldly. Speaking of which, I don't care for that lousy Mu clan either. However, I should take back what belongs to me. Xiao Mu raised her head to look at the crown prince before leaning close to his ear and muttering. Emolienne nodded as he listened. When the old man acknowledges you in a few days, I'll have him write it when we meet. Don't worry, it won't be long before the old man gives in. Xiao Mu blinked her large eyes and nodded. Okay. The two of them chatted for a while more. After a while, Emolienne increased the heat and roasted a few sweet potatoes. The young couple was peeling the sweet potato and eating it when Zhao Tengdong's respectful voice came from outside. Reporting to the Crown Prince, Crown Princess. Madame Zhongli sent an invitation for the plum blossom meet. Arbor took a bite of the sweet potato and asked curiously, Who is it? Emolienne's expression was indifferent as she said, General Zhongli's wife. She loved lively events, so every few days, she would hold a small banquet and invite all the noble ladies. If you don't want to go, then don't go. We don't have to do anything for her. Arbor's eyes swiveled. Say, do you think that imposter will go? Emolienne couldn't help but be startled. He had read the detailed information, so he naturally knew that the young lady who impersonated Jojo had been violently beaten up by an unknown person the night she returned to the Mu residence. That was why she hadn't had the chance to come out after being back for so many days. She had been recuperating at home every day. With his subordinate's influence, he naturally could effortlessly find out who the person who had violently beaten up the imposter was. Of course, there was no need to let Jojo know that eldest Qin had stood up for Jojo and beaten up the imposter. Humph, there was no need for him to make a move. Logically speaking, that imposter should be attending tomorrow's plum blossom meet. Emolienne nodded. Didn't that concubine sure from the Mu family bring her back to stir up trouble? Chapter 2530. General Zhongli's wife held a plum blossom banquet, and there were many noble ladies who gave face. If concubine Shi's original intention was to let the impostor replace Jojo, she would definitely not let go of this opportunity to show her face. Then I'll go. Sir Jojo nodded vigorously and said, I'll go and meet this impostor. Emolian nodded and said, Okay, I'll go with you. You're not allowed to go. The little fellow immediately reached out to cover his mouth and blinked cleverly. You're too eye-catching, you have to hide at home. There were a bunch of women in that place. What was there to go? What was there to go? Sir Jojo was going to fight, don't worry. He would definitely return victorious. Emolian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He reached out to pull down her little hand and kissed her soft little hand. Don't worry, your husband is only yours. Yours is only yours. How could this man be so flirtatious? Sir Jojo couldn't help but reach out to pinch his face. He reached out to hug him and muttered, That's right, it's mine. Emolian couldn't help but be amused. He hugged and rubbed her for a while before saying to Zhao Tengdong, who was waiting outside the door and didn't dare to breathe loudly, Go and make arrangements. Send the crown princess to the banquet tomorrow. Yes. Zhao Tengdong immediately heaved a sigh of relief. He felt that the time he had been waiting outside the door was so long that it almost made him cry. The imperial palace, the Empress Dowager's chamber. Little Li is really dead? Empress Dowager Chen sat under the warm blanket, looking a little puzzled. This old lady was already over 70 years old. She had a round and well-maintained appearance. Compared to her real age, she was naturally at least 10 years younger. The nanny who accompanied the old lady immediately nodded when she heard this. Yes. Does the Empress Dowager want to summon that crown princess? Empress Dowager Chen pondered for a while and shook her head. Let's wait and see. The little crown princess that Emolian brought back, regardless of whether they recognized her or not, seemed to be someone that Emolian had set his mind on. From the looks of it, he was quite a powerful figure. As soon as he came back, he dealt with the people of the Divine Hall on the street, beat up Emo Zhuang, and then killed Little Li in front of Eunuch Li from the Imperial Household Department. TSK, what an amazing person. It's said that Eunuch Li fell seriously ill after he returned. He still can't get out of bed. Sigh, how pitiful. Tell the Imperial Physician Building to send him more tonics, so that he can recover. After all, the number of old people in the palace is decreasing day by day, Empress Dowager Chen said with a sigh. Empress Dowager is merciful. This servant will go and instruct them. Empress Dowager Chen nodded, and took a cup of bird's nest from the palace maid. She said lightly, Baojiao is immature. Go back to the Chen family, and you will know what to do. Yes, this old servant will do it immediately. Please rest assured, Empress Dowager. Empress Dowager Chen nodded. She tiredly waved her hand and had everyone leave, until she was the only one left in the palace. She lay there in silence for a long time. In the end, she couldn't help but scold the idiot. The Chen family was declining day by day. The children in the family were not promising in their official career or cultivation. If it weren't for her and her eldest nephew, who supported the Chen family, Empress Dowager Chen sighed. She felt her body was a bit heavy. After all, she was old. She thought that if it were a few decades ago, she wouldn't be so cautious. Really, she had to admit that she was old. There were shadows outside the window. The room inside the window was silent. Chapter 2531. It was close to noon. 6 black stallions with shiny black fur trotted across Changle Street and turned left towards Kongla Street. Every inch of this land was worth its weight in gold. Unless one was an important official or an influential family, one really did not have the financial ability to settle down in Kongla Street. To be honest, if one was not an influential family, they would not be able to afford to live in Kongla Street. Therefore, Zhongli's residence was able to occupy the most eye-catching location on Kongla Street. The residence was 3 to 4 times the size of the other residences. Compared to the residences of the princes on Changla South Street, it wasn't inferior at all. When the Eastern Palace's carriage appeared in front of everyone, it caused a small commotion. When the people of Zhongli's residence received the news, they immediately went out to welcome them and arranged for the Eastern Palace's carriage to enter the residence directly and not stop outside. The person who came to welcome the carriage was Zhongli, eldest young madam, the eldest daughter-in-law of great General Zhongli. She led 2 rows of servants, and very respectfully welcomed the Eastern Palace's carriage into the residence. The carriage stopped at the entrance of the inner courtyard. Arbor did not need anyone's help, and walked down the carriage on her own. Her quiet gaze fell on the dignified and elegant eldest young madam at the front. Zhongli, eldest young madam, led the servants to kneel in greeting, and said with a smile, "The Crown Princess has graced our humble abode with your presence. Your presence brings light to our humble abode." Seeing that she was still polite, Miss Qiao suppressed her thoughts of picking a fight with her. If you obediently don't find trouble with Jojo, Jojo will not find trouble with you." Zhongli, eldest young madam, unexpectedly raised her eyes to look at the Crown Princess, and could not help but suppress her stunned expression. The little Crown Princess in front of her was really too cold and elegant, with a hint of playfulness amidst her elegance. With 2 symmetrical buns on her head, she looked like a little paralyzed and adorable. Under her scarlet cloak, the red brocade collar wrapped around her slender little neck and blended her fair and jade-like face with the fluffy fur. She was really very beautiful. Xiao Mu waved her hand to have them stand up, and then she trotted into the main hall. Eldest young madam personally led the way and said with a smile, "Mother-in-law originally wanted to personally welcome Her Highness the Crown Princess, but your imperial aunt, Qin Wang Fei, just happened to enter the fu, so mother-in-law really couldn't leave." Arbor nodded, and had no intention of making trouble. The host was holding a banquet to admire the plum blossoms, so naturally he had invited all the princes and madams of the influential families in the city. It was inevitable that they would be busy with welcoming the guests, so there was nothing much to say. Moreover, this Zhongli manor could be considered to have done things properly. Sending the great general's eldest daughter-in-law to welcome her was not considered a slight. Madame Zhongli was 7 or 8 years older than the Crown Princess. She thought that young people would have more topics to talk about when they were together. Who knew that the Crown Princess was a stoic person of few words? Come to think of it, no matter who the facial paralysis was, they didn't have much to talk about. Thinking back to when she was a fake servant girl in the Qin estate, wasn't she also not very popular? I don't understand why he's so unpopular. Sir Jojo wrinkled his small nose. On the side, however, eldest young madam's heart was beating like a drum. Looking at the little stoic's cold face, her mood was a bit perturbed. The Crown Princess was unhappy? The Crown Princess has arrived. After the announcement was made outside the door, the hall fell into a uniform silence. The stoic face expressionlessly walked in through the door, and the gazes of the several people sitting in the hall uniformly turned towards her. What a little beauty with a jade-like face and pearl-like skin that could be broken by the slightest breeze. Chapter 2532. The eyes of the women in the hall, each with their own thoughts, flickered a few times. As the madam of the main household, Madame Zhongli was respectfully accompanying Princess Consort Kong. When she saw the young Crown Princess enter, she hastily stood up and saluted. Greetings to the Crown Princess. Accompanying Arbor into the main hall were Aunt Jing, Saixiu and Saiqi. At this time, Saixiu and Saiqi curtsied and stood to the side. Aunt Jing stepped forward and whispered to Arbor, "This is Great General Zhongli's wife." Arbor glanced indifferently at Madame Zhongli and nodded. With her status, there was no need for her to return the greeting to Madame Zhongli. "That is Princess Consort Kong, His Highness the Crown Prince, and your imperial aunt." Arbor looked at Princess Consort Kong curiously. She could be considered to have a good understanding of the Mo family's current imperial relatives. According to the relationship chart Mo Lian gave her, the one who had the closest relationship with the emperor was this Prince Kong. Nowadays, the emperor entrusted Prince Kong to handle major court affairs and matters that needed to be handled personally. He greatly relied on and trusted this elder brother of his. Prince Kong was the emperor's eldest brother, so according to seniority, he was naturally her and the crown prince's imperial uncle. And this plump and somewhat unhealthy royal consort in front of her was her imperial aunt. Arbor blinked. On the other hand, Princess Consort Kong couldn't sit still anymore. She and Prince Kong had no children in their entire lives. Later on, they adopted a daughter born by her maternal sister-in-law, but she wasn't to her liking. When she saw the little stoic for the first time today, she thought she was incredibly adorable. This child was simply too lovable. This was that child Emolien's wife? Good job, good job. She was so much better than that domineering woman his father found for him. This little fellow looked like a soft and adorable little bun at first glance. Ayaya, she was truly adorable. The two small bags on her head were matched with two simple and generous pink beaded flowers. It was bright and beautiful to the point that it was just right. She didn't have any extra accessories on her head. She looked good, she looked really good. When Princess Consort Kong saw the little stoic, she found her especially pleasing to the eye, and a smile involuntarily spilled onto her chubby face. Come here, come here. Aunt Jing was stunned. She was naturally familiar with this Princess Consort Kong. For female officials like them who worked in the palace, even if they didn't know the temperament of the members of the imperial family, like the back of their hand, they had more or less heard about it. For example, this Princess Consort Kong usually did not like to get close to people. Don't be fooled by her smiling face. She was actually very unapproachable. Many noble ladies wanted to flatter her. After all, Prince Kong was the most powerful official in the court. But not everyone was able to gain Princess Kang's favor. Now when the little crown princess walked in, she didn't even say a word, but Princess Kong took notice of her. It can't be. Everyone silently muttered in their minds. When they turned their heads to look, they saw the little crown princess pattering over to Princess Consort Kong with small steps. When Princess Consort Kong took a closer look, she became even more attracted to her. This little fellow's small appearance was too good-looking. Looking at that sparkling small face and those spirited pitch-black eyes. TSK, where did Emolien pick up this little wifey from? It couldn't be that he had run into an enormous stroke of luck, right? Princess Consort Kong grabbed Arbor's small hand and said with a grin, "Good child, I'm your imperial aunt. This is our first meeting. An imperial aunt doesn't have anything good on her, so you can wear this for fun." Chapter 2533. The corners of everyone's mouths twitched. Princess Consort Kong was being too modest. She had given a rare treasure like the exquisite fire brocade bracelet to the little crown princess to play with, and she still called it nothing good. Everyone knew that Princess Consort Kong had a cold constitution since she was young. This exquisite fire brocade bracelet was a protective bracelet that the old prince had found a master craftsman to make after traveling all over the country. It was a fire elemental defensive artifact, and it had the function of warming the body when worn. More importantly, this bracelet was a space bracelet, because Princess Consort Kong was an ordinary woman without any cultivation or spiritual sense. The old prince had spent a lot of effort to find a special material to add to the exquisite fire brocade bracelet, so that it could be used by her. Therefore, ordinary people could also use this defensive artifact and open a space, but the princess consort could not form a contract with it. But now, Princess Consort Kong had actually given a divine artifact to the little crown princess, whom she had just met, without batting an eye. Wasn't this too exaggerated? According to the norm, the little crown princess should be blushing modestly and giving in a little, right? Jealousy flashed through the eyes of a young girl sitting below Princess Consort Kong. She felt as if she was sitting on pins and needles. Her buttocks twisted slightly on the stool, and she bit her pale lips, looking like she wanted to say something but stopped herself. However, what made everyone's jaws drop was the little crown princess had actually reached out to receive the gift so openly, and then very naturally put it on her little hand. Since the exquisite fire brocade bracelet was a divine artifact, it had the ability to stretch and shrink. The moment it was in her hand, it fit her wrist. And the next thing that made everyone's eyes pop out of their sockets was the little crown princess had actually dripped her blood into her spiritual sense, and very smoothly formed a contract with the exquisite fire brocade bracelet. Haha, her actions were so damn fast. The exquisite fire brocade bracelet space was really not small. It even contained some of the princess consort's personal collections, such as antiques, calligraphy, paintings, jewelry, jade, and so on. There was also a small mountain of spirit coins piled up. At a glance, there were probably tens of millions. Jojo inexplicably felt happy, as if he had made a small fortune. Strange. Why would Jojo be interested in such a small amount of money? The girl sitting below Princess Kong immediately jumped up from her stool and pointed at Arbor as she screamed angrily. Rude. You, how dare you? You actually contracted with the exquisite fire brocade bracelet? Princess Consort Kang's smiling face instantly froze. She turned to sweep a glance at the long-faced girl and said with a frosty expression, Shut up. Since the bracelet was given to the crown princess, it naturally belonged to the crown princess. Wasn't it normal to have a contract? Iran, you're really becoming more and more unruly. Sit down. Lu Iran bit her lips and sat down with a twisted and resentful face. Her hands twisted the silk handkerchief as if she wanted to tear it apart. Princess Consort Kong glared at her fiercely, thinking to herself, as expected, she's not presentable. Didn't he usually reward her with a lot of things? This small family was very much like a sister-in-law, wanting to take all the good things. The little crown princess merely cast a glance at Lu Iran, then treated her as heir, and let her go. She took out a palm-sized square box from her inner world and handed it over to Princess Consort Kong. What is it? Princess Consort Kong stared blankly, then couldn't help but smile. A gift in return for the elders. The little crown princess spoke for the first time since she entered the family. Princess Consort Kong was over the moon from the little fellow's coaxing. However, the other people in the room had mixed feelings. Chapter 2534. Ha 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 ha. Princess Consort Kong laughed heartily as she held Arbor's little hand and rubbed it lovingly. Little fellow, you're really a good child. RMO Lien is truly fortunate to be able to marry you. Arbor nodded her little head in full agreement. She felt that Princess Consort Kang's taste was especially good. She herself also felt that she was pretty good. Lien was truly very fortunate to be able to marry her. The old and the young chatted happily there. Most of the time, it was Princess Consort Kong who was talking alone. The little crown princess asked her 18 questions, and she would pick one or two and answer simply with 4 or 5 words. The strange thing was that the two of them could actually continue chatting in this kind of chatting mode. If it were anyone else, they would have died from the conversation long ago. On the side, Lu Iran was so angry that she was about to vomit blood. She kept cursing Princess Consort Kong, this old thing, in her heart. She had waited on this old thing day and night in vain. She had asked for the space bracelet hundreds of times, but failed to get it. Yet, this old thing had so easily given it to a woman she had just met. Lu Iran's lungs were about to explode from anger. She felt aggrieved and resentful in her heart. She sat on the side like a vengeful spirit, glaring at Arbor with her glowing white eyes. If looks could kill people, Lu Iran would have already shot her thousands of poisonous glares and killed the little girl. Madame Zhongli interrupted with a smile at the right time. Princess Consort Kong and the crown princess really hit it off at first sight. That's right, that's right. Princess Consort Kang's attitude towards Madame Zhongli wasn't bad. She wasn't particularly distant and cold, nor was she very affectionate. It was just a formality. Now that she saw Madame Zhongli speak, Princess Consort Kong said proudly, Look at how good this daughter-in-law that our Emolian found. She has the looks and temperament. She doesn't lack in cultivation or intelligence. Everyone. Princess Consort Kong, aren't you bragging a bit too much? She does have the looks and temperament. But how can you judge this girl's intelligence when you've only interacted with her for less than a quarter of an hour? Furthermore, this little crown princess's cultivation wasn't particularly high. At a glance, he looked like a low-level spirit master. Was his cultivation high? But then again, as the high and mighty crown princess, there was actually no need for her to cultivate. After all, there were secret guards protecting her wherever she went. Everyone thought to themselves as they glanced at the little crown princess. It was truly difficult for Princess Consort Kong to continue chatting so eloquently in front of such an expressionless, paralyzed-faced Jojo. Sama was the kind of person who, if you insisted on chatting with her, would continue to chat with you politely. even though she only exchanged a few words with others. I'll call you Jojo from now on. Jojo, if our Emolian bullies you in the future, feel free to tell Imperial Aunt. Imperial Aunt will take care of him for you. Imperial Aunt will definitely stand by your side. Jojo thought about it seriously. He can't bully me. It had always been Lord Jojo who bullied him. Jojo, Sama was Lian's little emperor baby. Wasn't it normal for him to listen to Lord Jojo's words and actions? It was impossible for him to bully the little emperor. However, not long after he said this, Lord Jojo had the urge to cry. As expected, he couldn't be too full of himself, because retribution would arrive in minutes. Lord Jojo would soon be slapped in the face. Chapter 2535. Jojo and Princess Consort Kong had a warm chat for a while until the servants came to report that Princess Consort Jung had arrived. Only then did everyone let out a slight sigh of relief. They wiped the sweat from their foreheads and thought to themselves, fuck, we finally don't have to listen to the awkward conversation between Princess Consort Kong and the Crown Princess that's really fucking enough. What are they talking about? When women gather together, shouldn't they be talking about which jewelry store opened in the capital? What kind of beautifying dishes did Kaidai Veranda come out with? Shouldn't it be like this? Look at how Princess Consort Kong and the Crown Princess were awkwardly chatting about all sorts of things. Their thoughts were flying too fast. Princess Consort Jung held a woman's hand and walked in together intimately. Everyone felt that it was a bit strange. Everyone knew that Princess Consort Jung's appearance was average. Moreover, her forehead was narrow and slightly sunken. Her nose was sharp and narrow, but her mouth wasn't small. Saying that her appearance was average was a bit of a compliment. Actually, she was just a bit ugly. Princess Consort Jung's naturally harsh and merciless appearance usually attracted a lot of gossip for her. What she disliked the most in her life was walking together with beautiful girls. But today, the girl beside her was graceful and elegant. She was wearing a long white dress that wrapped around her chest, which made her skin look as delicate as milk. Arbor looked at them coldly. To be precise, she was looking at the girl beside Princess Consort Jung on the top of her head. She recognized this hairpin. It should be said that she had a very deep impression of this hairpin. This 5 fortune jade hairpin was Shi Yongqian's favorite. She wore it every day and couldn't part with it no matter where she went. Arbor clenched her fists tightly. Her gaze was cold as she stared at the girl in white fluttering clothes in front of her. Shi Yongqian. Long time no see. I'm back. Are you surprised? Are you surprised? Shi Yongqian felt like she was being stared at by a poisonous snake. Her long brows furrowed slightly. She inadvertently raised her head and looked in the direction of that sharp gaze. What entered her sight was a young girl who was as delicate as jade porcelain. When she saw the young girl's appearance, she couldn't help but be slightly dazzled. Shi Yongqian originally thought that she was fair and beautiful enough, and her skin was delicate enough, but it turned out that there was no comparison at all. Now that she stood in front of the little girl, she was immediately outshone. The beauty and milk-white skin that she was so proud of was not even worth mentioning in front of this little girl. Shi Yongqian took a deep breath and did her best to maintain a smiling appearance. Following Princess Consort Jung's bow to Princess Consort Kong, the two sisters said in a soft voice, "Greetings to Princess Consort Kong." Princess Consort Kong nodded and had them rise out of unfamiliarity. She then held Xiaomu's hand, and her expression turned into one of familiarity and intimacy. "Child, meet your sister-in-law, Princess Consort Jung. Her husband, King Zheng, is the adopted son of the great emperor. His name is Mo Shikong. This should be the first time the two of you have met. Greetings, Crown Princess." Princess Consort Jung's eyes flickered slightly as she greeted her with a smile. "Greetings, Zheng Wangfei." Since Princess Consort Jung was her sister-in-law in name, Arbor naturally wouldn't let her perform a full salute to avoid giving people an excuse for being arrogant and rude, which would give people a reason to gossip. Arbor stepped forward and also returned a half salute. "Greetings, Crown Princess." Shi Yongqian, who was at the side, also hurriedly followed suit and curtsied. However, she had always been conceited about her family background and had an extremely arrogant personality. She automatically straightened up after squatting for less than half a second. This kind of salute was merely a formality. Generally, no one would make things difficult for a noble daughter of an aristocratic family. Who knew who allowed you to stand up? 10 o'clock. Chapter 2536. Shi Yongqian was taken aback. She almost suspected that the crown princess was talking to her. The crown princess actually used such an icy tone to talk about her. The Shi family's second miss? Ignorant of etiquette, Arbor said coldly. Saishio, teach her. Saishio immediately walked up and demonstrated a salute. Greetings to the crown princess. The young crown princess nodded and gestured for Saishio to stand up. She then turned to look at the stupefied Shi Yongqian. Unruly. Start over. Everyone. Princess Consort Kong silently stifled her laughter and tried wiping her lips with a handkerchief. She chuckled softly and said, Second Miss Shi, the crown princess is talking to you. Why aren't you responding? You really don't know etiquette. Shi Yongqian's charming face flushed red, and she looked incredulously at the crown princess who was looking directly at her. The young crown princess had slapped her left cheek in front of all the madams and noble ladies, then slapped her right cheek with the back of her hand. Shi Yongqian's back stiffened as she stood motionlessly in front of the little stoic. Most of the people in the hall were also silently watching the show. At this moment, the sounds of whispering increased. Most of the people who could sit with Princess Consort Kong in this main hall were madams with status in the royal court. Their husbands' family's power was ranked among the top in the imperial capital. These women were mostly slick and sly. Seeing that this second Miss Shi had somehow offended the young crown princess and was targeted by her, how could she possibly say something to draw hatred? Moreover, this Shi family was ranked last among the 6 great patrician families, but they were very high profile in their conduct. They tried to curry favor with the powerful and had unclear connections with the royal court, so they were very disliked. Not only did they rush to marry their eldest daughter, Shi Yongyan, to Zheng Wang as a consort, but they also repeatedly used Zheng Wang's name to secretly deal with some disobedient courtiers. She really didn't know how this family could stretch their hands so far. Shi Yongqian saw that no one was speaking up for her, and Princess Consort Zheng standing next to her was completely stunned. She couldn't help but bite her lips in grievance. She bowed and said, How did my daughter offend the crown princess to cause the crown princess to treat my daughter like this? The young crown princess didn't reply. She just stared coldly at the woman in front of her. In his previous life, she was such a high-spirited woman. Now, she actually revealed such a timid appearance like a little white rabbit. He really knew how to act. If he didn't know what kind of personality this woman had, he would have really been deceived by her. In this life, they met several years earlier. At this time, Shi Yongqian was only a 17-year-old girl. Compared to her ruthless and arbitrary style in his previous life, she was much more tender. Arbor slightly pursed his lips and swept a glance at Shi Yongqian's uneasy face. He turned and helped Princess Consort Kong sit down, and he also sat down next to her. Shi Yongqian gritted her teeth and half-squatted, maintaining a saluting posture. However, her fingertips had already pierced into her palms. What a domineering and rude crown princess! She had just returned to the capital, yet she was like a shrew, stirring up trouble everywhere. The emperor hadn't even acknowledged her status, yet she dared to be so shameless as to put on airs and punish her? She really wanted to see when this bearing fangs and brandishing claws woman would fall from the crown princess' divine altar. If such a day came, Shi Yongqian tightly gritted her teeth. That day would be the day she took revenge and consigned this woman to eternal damnation. Miss Shi, are you cursing this crown princess by gritting your teeth? Chapter 2537. Shi Yongqian's expression stiffened, and she crouched there, feeling extremely uncomfortable all over. The little stoic sat there and gazed at her coldly. As expected, your Shi family is quite capable. You don't even respect the Eastern Palace. Then presumably, His Majesty is nothing more than this in your hearts. Shi Yongqian's heart abruptly chilled, and Princess Consort Zheng, who was snickering on the side, couldn't help but stiffen. She hastily walked up and said with a smile, "The crown princess really knows how to joke. Yongqian is young and doesn't know proper etiquette. I hope that the crown princess won't take offense." "How old?" Princess Consort Zheng couldn't help but be stunned. Why did she feel like this little crown princess's thoughts were jumping around? She almost couldn't keep up with her speech patterns. 17 years old. Yongqian is only 17 years old after all. This crown princess is 15 years old. Everyone. The madams who didn't have a good relationship with the Shi family all along couldn't help but snigger. They really wanted to ask Princess Consort Zheng if this slap in the face was fast. She had just said she was young. But who would have expected that the little crown princess was even younger? Even though she was young, she still couldn't disregard proper etiquette. The little crown princess's meaning was very clear. The little crown princess maintained her small face and said dryly, "Age doesn't represent everything. Many times, it really isn't easy to continue teaching when one's foundation is crooked. For example, your Shi family." She mocked coldly. "It can be seen from this mist that your upbringing is truly lacking." Everyone. Shi Yongqian was so infuriated that her nose was about to become crooked. How could she endure it now? She suddenly straightened her body. "Crown Princess, are you taking advantage of your position to bully others?" However, when she abruptly stood up from her crouching position, Shi Yongqian's legs turned to jelly, and she involuntarily swayed. Xiaomu suddenly flared up, slapping the small sandalwood table next to her with a backhand. Her charming face was as cold as a frosty snowy night as she expressionlessly asked, "Where are the Crown Prince Consort's personal guards?" Aunt Jing's eyelids twitched violently. Ever since the young crown princess had made things difficult for second Miss Shi, she had felt that things were developing in a strange direction. As expected, it hasn't even been 3 minutes. Then something happened. Bang bang bang. A few large holes suddenly appeared on the roof, and 7 or 8 figures flew down from above. They knelt on one knee in front of the crown princess, and said respectfully in unison, "Here." Madame Zhongli hurriedly stood up with the young madam's help. The corner of her mouth twitched twice. The rest of the people also had a dumbfounded expression as they looked at these elite guards, who suddenly jumped down from the roof. Could it be that these people had been guarding the crown princess all this time? Was it the crown prince's men? "Tie her up." Arbor pointed at Shi Yongqian and said with a cold gaze, "Second Miss Shi has lost her composure in front of the crown princess. She is impolite and immoral. Drag her out and give her 10 lashes to clear her head." Everyone. Shi Yongqian was really anxious this time. When she saw the guards rushing up to tie her up, she couldn't help but put up a strong front and said, "How dare you? See if I dare or not." Arbor smirked coldly. When she stared at her, Shi Yongqian felt that this young crown princess seemed to have a trace of abnormality. She didn't know if it was her imagination, but she felt that the young crown princess was like a venomous snake that could pounce on her at any time and bite her throat. "Let me go! Let me go!" Shi Yongqian struggled and exclaimed, Eldest sister, save me." Chapter 2538. A trace of hesitation flashed across Princess Consort Zheng's face. She had never liked this second sister of hers, but now that the 2 sisters represented the Shi family's reputation, leaving her in the lurch would only make others think that she was cold-hearted. She would definitely be in a bad mood if those gossipy women gossiped about her. Princess Consort Zheng frowned. She slightly eased that sharp and unkind expression of hers and forced a smile as she said to Arbor, "Crown Princess, my younger sister was too agitated just now. That's why her words were so extreme and offended the Crown Princess. Please be magnanimous and forgive her." Sir Jojo coldly replied, "I don't want to be magnanimous." Everyone. What was going on? The little Crown Princess looked like she was going to spit on the heavens and earth the moment she entered the room, and without any warning, she started attacking that unlucky second miss of the Shi family? Yet Princess Consort Kong couldn't help but laugh out loud. She thought to herself, "This really is a soft and adorable little bun. Look, even when she's angry, she's especially interesting." Princess Consort Zheng's expression also turned ugly. She said with a cold face, Although you are the crown princess, we have always been in China. But in our divine continent, we have always been somewhat tolerant of the strong. My second sister, Yongqian, is at least a 5th-level spiritual master with a 5th-level spiritual fire. Princess Consort Zheng harumphed and said, in our divine continent, it's not easy for females to cultivate. My second sister's talent can be considered pretty good. Arbor rolled her eyes. What are you rambling on about? Drag her out. Beat her. The most annoying thing was to talk for so long without getting to the main point. Who has the patience to listen to you blabber on? Do you think you're a flower that needs to bloom? Everyone was dumbfounded. Did the little crown princess really not understand? Or was she pretending not to? Wasn't Princess Consort Zheng talking to her about some customary rules in the divine continent? Generally, divine realm experts above the 10th level were exempted from kneeling in front of the emperor. Of course, this sure Yongqian was only a 5th-level spiritual master. Sorry, she was thousands of miles away from being a great divine master, although Princess Consort Zheng was a bit nonsensical. This little crown princess in front of them clearly wasn't someone who followed the rules. They really wanted to ask, what kind of family could raise such a freak? How could sure Yongqian be a match for the crown prince's guards? What level 5 soul master? In front of a row of level 10 great soul masters, she definitely wouldn't be able to resist. In addition, sure Yongqian had always been a prideful person in front of others. She wouldn't easily get into a fight and ruin her image, hence, the 2 crown prince's personal guards easily subdued second Miss Sure. They took out hemp ropes from their inner worlds and tied the second young miss up. Then they dragged her out of the door. This unforeseen event happened too quickly. By the time Sure Yongyan regained her senses, her second sister had already been dragged to the door. Sure Yongyan's harsh face immediately contorted. She shouted at the top of her lungs, "How dare you?" Arbor looked at her as if she was an idiot. What was there to be afraid of? Wasn't it already being done? Was there something wrong with this Princess Consort Zheng's eyesight? Or was there something wrong with her brain? Why did she keep asking such retarded questions? Princess Consort Zheng was about to be angered to death by the little stoic. She really had never seen such an arrogant and unreasonable person. She was actually the crown princess? Oh, my heavens! Princess Consort Zheng rolled her eyes fiercely in her mind. If Sir Jojo knew, he would definitely slap her to death. What arrogant and unreasonable? Nonsense! Sir Jojo was the most reasonable little lady in the world. Chapter 2539. Eldest sister save me, eldest sister. Sure Yongqian was a little scared now, and she kept shooting looks at Princess Consort Zheng. Princess Consort Zheng looked back at the direction she was winking at and quickly said to Madame Zhongli, "Madame Zhongli, if anything happens to my second sister in your residence." What she meant was that even if they couldn't find trouble with the Eastern Palace, the Sure family could still find trouble with the Zhongli residence. Madame Zhongli's expression changed slightly, and she glared at Princess Consort Zheng rather angrily. Princess Consort Zheng was a classic example of biting at anyone she saw, dragging people down with her. However, the Zhongli residence wasn't to be trifled with. Princess Consort Zheng smiled at Madame Zhongli. Madame Zhongli thought for a moment, then quickly stepped forward and bowed to Arbor. "Crown Princess, it was just a small misunderstanding just now. What do you think? Should we let second Miss off the hook? After all, if word of this spreads that you, the Crown Princess, reprimanded second Miss Sure in our Zhongli residence, it won't be good for the Crown Princess reputation. If word got out that the Crown Princess of the Eastern Palace was bossy, domineering, and unreasonable, it naturally wouldn't be good for her reputation." Although her words were reasonable, there was a hint of threat in them. Lord Xiao Qiao's cold and silent gaze swept over that Madame Zhongli. A cold smile that didn't seem like a smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. "I believe that everyone knows about this Crown Prince Consort's actions on Changle Street the moment I entered the capital yesterday. Are there any rumors today?" Everyone in the noble circle knew about what happened on Changle Street. They all knew that the little Crown Princess wasn't someone to be trifled with. What was both unexpected and expected was that not a single rumor dared to circulate in the capital today. I even dared to teach the saintess of the temple a lesson. Do you think I wouldn't dare to teach this insignificant second miss of the Sure family a lesson? Everyone was instantly speechless. 30 lashes. If you dare to utter another word, you'll add 10 more lashes. Arbor casually found a suitable whip from her inner world and threw it to the guard. Hit. With the sound of a gust of wind, the whip landed on second young mistress Sure's body with a whoosh, causing her to let out a heart-wrenching scream. You dare to hit me? You dare to hit me? Sure Yongqian's eyes widened in disbelief as she glared at Arbor. She didn't know if her eyes were playing tricks on her, but she clearly saw a trace of coldness and satisfaction in the little crown princess' eyes the moment the whip fell. She actually enjoyed watching him get beaten up? This person must be a pervert. The crown prince of the Eastern Palace actually married such a vicious and twisted psychopath. She really wanted to tear this woman apart. However, his body was tied to the tree, and his spiritual energy was suppressed by someone else. There was no room for resistance, and he didn't even have the ability to use his spiritual energy to protect his body. When the whip landed on her body, it was as if it was lashing her heart, her lungs, and her internal organs. Ah! Sure Yongqian screamed. Her scream was so tragic that it startled some of the noble ladies who were playing in the garden. The left prime minister's wife had just arrived at the entrance of Zhongli's residence and alighted from the carriage when she heard such a shocking scream. The sound seemed to have come from the main courtyard. She raised her head to look in that direction and couldn't help but frown. What was going on? The servant who welcomed the guests seemed a little embarrassed. She hurriedly covered it up and led Madame Chen and Miss Chen into the courtyard. Baojia, don't be so willful anymore, Madame Chen exhorted. Chapter 2540. There was a sweet smile on Chen Baojia's pretty little face as she held her mother's hand and said coquettishly, "Mother, what are you talking about? You make it sound like I'm causing trouble all the time." Sigh. Madame Chen sighed. You have to take what your grandaunt told Mama to warn you yesterday to heart, okay? There are some people that we can't casually deal with. Madame Chen said seriously. Don't make trouble for the Chen estate and your father. Chen Baojia was still smiling and nodding her little head repeatedly, looking extremely obedient. Madame Chen had just arrived at the entrance of the inner courtyard with her daughter when they saw a smiling woman leading 2 girls towards them. Madame Chen. Concubine Sure smiled and bowed to the left prime minister's wife. Madame Chen couldn't help but be startled. Why are you here? Where's your Madame Mu? Sure Huixin's face tightened, and she secretly suppressed the anger that was surging up. She said with a fake smile. Madame had a headache early this morning, so Huixin brought the 2 children over to join in the fun. Madame Chen nodded and didn't say anything else. She pulled her daughter and walked past Sure Huixin. Sure Huixin was even more dissatisfied. She knew that these so-called official wives looked down on her, who was born as a concubine. But was this what she wanted? Although she was born in the Sure family, one of the 6 great aristocratic families, she was only a concubine's daughter from the 3rd branch after all. She had already racked her brains to find a good marriage for herself. With her status, it was naturally impossible for her to marry into the Mu estate as the official wife. But what if that woman Mu Qingya happened to die of illness? Then whether she had the chance to be promoted to the official wife was another matter. If one day she became the wife of the Mu estate's master, gritting her teeth, Concubine Sure forced a smile and followed Madame Chen and her daughter into the main courtyard. The moment they stepped into the courtyard, the smell of fresh blood wafted into their noses. Madame Chen and Sure Huixin couldn't help but be stunned. When the 2 saw the situation in the courtyard, they were even more stunned. Weren't they here to attend the plum blossom banquet? Why was there such a bloody scene? Mother, it seems to be cousin. Mu Royan tugged at Sure Huixin's sleeve in shock and pointed at the woman who was tied under the tree in the courtyard. Her head was drooping and her body was covered in whip wounds. What? Sure Huixin was shocked. She raised her head to take a closer look, and her heart skipped a beat. Was it really the second daughter of the 1st branch, Sure Yongqian? TSK. The arrogant second young mistress of the 1st branch would also have such a day. What a joke. Her relationship with the 1st branch had never been good, so she naturally had no intention of helping. In any case, she was just a lowly concubine mother, and couldn't be of much help. The purpose of her visit today was mainly to bring Qiao Yingchun to broaden her horizons and see more of the clan relatives and influential officials. She didn't have to act like a country bumpkin entering the city all day long. A thought flashed through Shi Huixin's mind, and she reached out to pull over Qiao Yingchun, who had been cowering behind her the entire time, and whose eyes kept darting around. She took a few steps forward and smiled at Madame Zhongli, whose expression was unsightly. Mu Estates Shi Huixin greets Madame Zhongli. Madame Zhongli swept her a glance. She was feeling vexed, so her attitude was a bit irritated. All right. No need to be so courteous. Stay at the side. Madame Zhongli had seen this concubine Shi a few times. She was very good at currying favor. She usually didn't find her very annoying, but today, she felt that she was a bit of an eyesore. Chapter 2541. Can't you tell that I'm vexed by this unpresentable thing? Shi Huixin quickly put on a fawning smile and pulled Qiao Yingchun to her side. She said to Madame Zhongli with a smile, "Madam, let me introduce you. This is the young lady our Mu family found not long ago, after wandering outside for many years. Her name is Mu Qiao. Madam, please meet her." "Jojo, hurry up and greet Madam." Madame Zhongli's sword-like gaze shot towards Qiao Yingchun and Shi Huixin. She was racking her brains to deal with the matter of the Shi family's second young lady. How could she have the leisure to listen to Shi Huixin's nonsense and meet the Mu family's long-lost daughter? What the hell did the Mu family's long-lost daughter have to do with her? This concubine sure just had to come up with such a critical juncture and forcefully introduce her. Was this how concubine Shi's brain worked? Wasn't it too funny to act like this? Qiao Yingchun was intimidated by Madame Zhongli's aura. She was so frightened that her legs went limp and she fell to the ground. She trembled as she kowtowed and shouted, "Mu Qiao greets Madame Zhongli, Mu Qiao greets Madame Zhongli." Everyone was speechless. What kind of situation was this? Didn't concubine Shi introduce her as the Mu family's young lady? Why was she acting like a soft-footed shrimp that couldn't be presentable and bowing so respectfully to Madame Zhongli? It was laughable to not know etiquette, but excessive etiquette was even more laughable. Chen Baojia giggled while covering her handkerchief. Mu Royan, who was standing to the side, was also stunned. Then, her face flushed red from embarrassment. She wanted nothing more than to kick this shameless thing to death. Concubine Shi didn't get angry. Instead, the smile on her face deepened. The more Mu Qiao, this unpresentable thing, became famous and spread in the imperial capital, the better it was for her, right? Madame Zhongli was stunned. She glanced disdainfully at Qiao Yingchun on the ground. She secretly despised her, but she put on an amiable expression. "Miss Mu, you don't have to be so respectful. You should quickly get up." Qiao Yingchun was so panicked that she broke out in cold sweat. She knelt on the ground and turned her head to glance at concubine Shi. Seeing concubine Shi nod at her with a smile, Qiao Yingchun finally let out a sigh of relief. Her legs were weak as she struggled to prop herself up. Madame Zhongli looked down on her even more, but she didn't show it on her face. Instead, she said gently, "Miss Mu, please go to the side first." Qiao Yingchun nodded. In an instant, he seemed to have sensed something. Qiao Yingchun only felt a gust of cold wind blow past her neck. She suddenly turned her head and met a pair of dark eyes. The little girl seemed to be baring her fangs at her, and she was so shocked that she took a few steps back. When he took a closer look, there were no fangs. The stoic face was currently looking at her with a tranquil expression, faint traces of mockery and ridicule hanging from the corners of her lips. Qiao Yingchun felt as if she had run 700 to 800 meters, and her heart started to pound uncontrollably. Her pupils suddenly shrank, and she subconsciously took 2 steps back, forcefully suppressing the scream that was about to burst out of her throat. Why was she here? Why is that damned girl Arbor here? She wouldn't forget this damned stoic face even if she died. It was this damned girl who opposed her at every turn. Ever since she was young, she wanted to snatch everything from her. She wanted to snatch everything from her. She didn't have the slightest bit of respect for her older sister. This selfish woman, Why did she come to the Divine Province? She couldn't be here to snatch away her identity as a miss of the Mu family and snatch away the happy life that belonged to her, right? Chapter 2542. She thought about how she might wake up from her beautiful dream in the blink of an eye. The moment she woke up, she might return to Kwoto village, that ghastly and eerie place filled with a terrifying aura. She would have to accompany her mother and Song, to gnaw on tree bark and roast loaches. She couldn't help but feel nauseous, and her entire body started trembling. Why are you glaring at me? Xiao Yingchun suddenly launched an attack, pointing a finger at Arbor. Everyone was flabbergasted. What was going on? Was there something wrong with this Mu residence's young lady's brain? What kind of lunatic was she to actually pick a fight with the young crown princess? You didn't see the terrifying scene of the young crown princess picking a fight with the Shi family's second young lady just now, right? If you didn't see it, then you're out of luck. Of all the people she could pick a fight with, she just had to pick a fight with the crown princess. If she wasn't crazy, then what was? Arbor suddenly revealed a faint smile at her. It was really faint, but in Xiao Yingchuan's eyes, it was as if a life-reaping king of hell was waving at her. Like a lioness protecting her food, she pounced at Arbor, wanting to press her to the ground and tear her apart. Everyone. What happened? Where am I? Looks like this Mu residence's young lady isn't crazy. She's probably beyond cure. She was actually so stupid as to pounce on the crown princess? Who gave her the guts to be so arrogant? Although more than half of the people present didn't think highly of this crown princess, it was already an indisputable fact that the crown prince married the crown princess in the lower star domain. No matter what they thought, they had to at least put up a decent front. But was this Mu residence's young lady having a stroke in her head? Or was she suddenly possessed? Shi Huixin was also dumbfounded. She wanted to bring Xiao Yingchun out to meet people. So the more stupid Xiao Yingchun was, the more she would like her to be. But even if she was stupid, could she not behave so abnormally? This situation was inexplicably out of her control, wasn't it? Why did she suddenly throw herself at a little girl? Shi Huixin had actually seen Jojo's portrait before, but it was drawn by a shoddy artist. It was very different from the real Jojo. At first glance, Shi Huixin didn't get a clear look, and her line of sight was blocked by Xiao Yingchun, who had pounced over to cause trouble for the little crown princess. As a result, Shi Huixin didn't recognize her for a moment. Bitch, you want to fight with me for everything. You want to snatch everything from me. Why don't you just go and die? At this moment, Xiao Yingchun was completely seized by a terrifying fear. She fell into a crazy obsession, thinking that Arbor must be here to steal the identity of the Mu family's daughter from her. How could she let her take it away? How could she allow herself to return to the lower star field that gnawed on tree bark and grass, and was filled with terrifying monsters? The moment she saw Mr. Jojo, the stupid string in her head snapped. She was too terrified. She wanted to eliminate the source of her fear, which was Sir Jojo. Jojo was also a little surprised. She didn't even freaking make a move to cause trouble for Xiao Yingchun, right? This Xiao Yingchun was like an idiot, throwing herself to death? No wonder everyone looked at her as if she was a lunatic. Where did she get the confidence to think that she could pounce on Sir Jojo and press him to the ground to beat and bite him? Bam! Arbor raised her leg and swept it across. Xiao Yingchun retreated at twice the speed. Chapter 2543. Her legs were slightly bent, and she maintained a kneeling posture. Her knees rubbed against the ground heavily, and she uncontrollably retreated backward. This posture was really pure and clean. The corners of everyone's eyes twitched, and they rolled their eyes inwardly. If she didn't have the ability, why did she rush up to pick a fight? She was swept away by the little crown princess, right? Xiao Yingchun knelt on the ground and coughed wretchedly. She looked at her knees, which had 2 bloody marks on them, in shock. What happened just now? Her short-circuited brain was finally connected, and her body couldn't help but tremble slightly. She actually went to fight that terrifying woman from Arbor? When she looked up, she saw Qiao Mu slowly walking over and standing in front of her. The little girl looked down at her with a strange glint in her eyes. Who allowed you to use my name in reverse? Madame Zhongli's heart skipped a beat. She was about to step forward to stop her when the young madam pulled her back. Madame Zhongli thought about it. That's right. Today's incident happened even if it didn't happen. This little crown princess revealed a side that was different from ordinary people just now. She was arrogant, aloof, and spoke bluntly. She didn't listen to anyone. As the madam of Zhongli estate, she couldn't interfere with the crown princess's matters. She could only stand and watch. The other madams and young misses who were watching the show couldn't help but be taken aback. They recalled the crown princess's words just now and looked curiously at Xiaoying-chun, who was still kneeling on the ground and unable to get up. Oh right, the crown princess's name was Arbor. Didn't this Mu Estate's young lady Mu Qiao have her name in reverse? Was it such a coincidence? Everyone thought. The little crown princess's icy gaze landed on Xiaoying-chun. She sized her up from head to toe and sneered. You want to pretend to be me? Look at your face. You're already so old. Yet you're pretending to be a 15-year-old girl. Aren't you ashamed? Everyone! Exclamation point. Xiaoying-chun couldn't stop trembling. She was so angry. Her face was flushed red and covered with cold sweat and tears. The rouge on her face had long been soaked by sweat and tears, and now it was messily plastered on her face like mud. Arbor looked at her disheveled appearance and said mockingly, Although I don't care about the Mu family, it doesn't mean that you can impersonate me. Do you understand what I mean? Xiaoying-chun's entire body trembled. The fury of being exposed in front of everyone and having her identity exposed almost shot out from her chest. She was so angry that her whole body trembled and her teeth chattered nonstop. She screamed, Bitch, you're lying. Who wants to impersonate you? What did I replace you for? The noble women in the courtyard were all astute people who wouldn't understand the meaning behind the crown princess words. At this moment, they were all whispering to each other in astonishment. Could it be that the young lady that the Mu family had brought home with great fanfare was actually a fake? According to the crown princess's words, she is the real daughter of the Mu family? What? Didn't they say that the crown princess was a village girl from a small mountain village in the Lower Star Domain? How did she get involved with one of the 6 great patrician families? The Divine Province's talisman patrician family. The flames of gossip burned fiercely in everyone's hearts. Everyone couldn't help but look at Arbor, then at Xiaoying-chun. Their gazes swept back and forth between the two of them. Today's trip really wasn't in vain. Things kept coming up one after another. Tomorrow, the entire imperial capital's noble women would definitely talk about it. Chapter 2544. Arbor crouched down in front of Xiaoying-chun, propping up her small chin. She sized her up a few times. Xiaoying-chun, you've only grown older these past few years, but you've lost your wisdom, right? I was originally wondering which brainless person actually dared to impersonate this crown princess. Arbor reached out a finger and lightly poked Xiaoying-chun's head. I didn't expect this, and I'm a bit shocked. They actually brought you here. Arbor turned to look at the dumbstruck concubine Sure standing to the side. Concubine Sure's mind finally returned to normal. She understood that the person standing in front of her, whom everyone called the crown princess, was none other than Arbor. Concubine Sure was a bit frantic on the inside. When exactly did this Arbor enter the capital? Why didn't she receive any news at all? Arbor stood up, her gaze landing on Sure Huixin, as she recalled the contents of the information. You're that concubine Sure? Sure Huixin. Concubine Sure adjusted her expression, then bowed to Arbor with a fawning smile. Greetings to the crown princess. May I ask how my Mu family's young miss offended the crown princess? If Arbor raised a hand to cut her off. You brought Xiaoying-chun here to replace me just to cause trouble for me? What exactly is your motive? Crown princess must be joking. What motive could I, a mere concubine, have? Me? Arbor's expression abruptly changed, and she suddenly launched an attack. Saishio. Present. Slap her. Kaishio was now very familiar with slapping people's mouths. She was already very familiar with it. She walked up, rolled up her sleeves, and swiftly slapped concubine Sure's left cheek. Lowly servant. You actually dare to call yourself me in front of the crown princess. Unruly thing. Following that, Another slap came on her right cheek. The crown princess didn't say to stop, so she slapped concubine Sure on both sides several times. That concubine mother was beaten until she screamed miserably. She was so angry that she couldn't help but tremble, and her cheeks were flushed red. Seeing this, Mu Royan was about to go crazy. She screamed, "Mother!" and took out several attack talismans from her sleeves. She threw them at Arbor without a care. "How dare you!" Princess Consort Kong shouted angrily. "Hurry up and stop, you little child of the Mu family." The other madams, including Madame Zhongli, also rebuked angrily. However, those talismans abruptly stopped in front of Qiao Mu. Mu Royan's fingers repeatedly formed seals. Once, twice, thrice, and countless times, she was unable to open the talisman. A trace of bewilderment flashed through her eyes. "Let's go back." Arbor gently waved his hand. Those talismans then retreated back along the original path, and suddenly appeared in front of Mu Royan. Immediately after, talisman energy shot out in all directions, and several whooshing sounds were heard as they attacked her. Mu Royan frantically dodged the attack talisman. However, how could she possibly dodge at such a close distance? She was instantly hit by two of the talisman energy beams. She spat out blood and flew out, landing with a thud on the ground. At this moment, concubine Sure had already been slapped more than a dozen times. She was struggling to retaliate, but the crown prince's personal guard pressed down on her shoulder. "Enough!" Arbor spoke indifferently. His gaze swept over Kai Shio's red palm, and his eyes flashed. He threw her a small bottle of ointment, then picked out a palm-sized ferrule from his inner world, and threw it to her. "Are you stupid? I told you to hit people, but you wronged yourself. In the future, use a ruler to hit her." Kai Shio's expression froze. Then she cracked a smile and bowed. She said brightly, "Yes, Crown Princess." Everyone. Chapter 2545. "Jojo, are you alright?" Princess Consort Kang's question was truly ruthless. The other madams really wanted to ask Princess Consort, "Which eye of yours saw that something happened to the Crown Princess?" The little Crown Princess shook her head at Princess Consort Kong. "Imperial Aunt, they can't hurt me." That's good," Princess Consort Kong said with heartache. "I don't know where these wicked women came from. Each and every one of them is so ignorant and unruly. If we had known earlier that we were attending this kind of banquet, we wouldn't have come." A trace of embarrassment flashed across Madame Zhongli's face. She was also abnormally grieved and indignant. A perfectly good plum blossom banquet turned out like this. She was more infuriated than anyone else. "I'll give you 2 days to clarify the matter of the imposter. I don't want to hear any nonsensical rumors about the name Mu Qiao." After saying this, Arbor took Princess Consort Kang's hand and walked out of the courtyard. Halfway there, she turned back and glanced at concubine Sure, who was glaring angrily, with a spurious smile. "If your Mu family doesn't deal with this imposter within 2 days, don't blame me for using my methods to deal with this matter. I don't think you want to know how I'll deal with your Mu family." Arbor coldly glanced at them. Sure Huixin only felt that the little girl's icy gaze was like an evil spirit from the depths of hell, instantly snatching away half of her soul. "I'm not even afraid of the netherworld or hell, so why would I be afraid of you vicious people? Throw the imposter back to the Mu family. I'm afraid concubine Sure won't be able to deliver the message. Go and deliver this crown princess's message to the Mu family." "Yes." The crown prince's personal guards responded in unison. They nimbly picked up Qiao Chun, who was limp on the ground, and quickly walked out of the courtyard. Once these personal guards left, everyone finally breathed a sigh of relief. In addition, with the crown princess supporting Princess Consort Kong out, everyone felt that the air was much better. They looked at Sure Huixin, who was frozen there with an exceptionally unsightly expression. She then looked at Mu Royan, who was lying on the ground and vomiting blood. Everyone shifted their gazes to Sure Yongqian, who had been untied from the tree, and was on the verge of death. She silently lit a candle for them in her heart, and gave herself a serious warning. After seeing her today, the little crown princess was definitely not a kind person. Don't mess with him, absolutely don't mess with him. Whoever messed with him would be unlucky. Sir Jojo was in a good mood. He supported Princess Kong as they strolled slowly in the garden. Since they were here to attend the plum blossom banquet, then since they were already here, they might as well enjoy the plum blossoms. Jojo, is that Mu family's Inyangsha really so bold as to find a random person to impersonate you? Princess Consort Kong said angrily. Is there something wrong with this woman's brain? She's very clever. She wanted the fake to discredit me first. After that, when I came back, no matter how I tried to salvage the situation, the bad reputation had already spread. Princess Consort Kong was extremely shocked. She's really indulging in fantasy. Arbor smirked. But who cares? As long as I'm strong enough, I have the power to shut all of these frogs who make a fuss. Princess Consort Kong nodded approvingly and said with a laugh. Right, the old prince also spoke like that. I was wondering why I hit it off with you so well. It turns out your personality is really similar to the old prince's. Oh right, there's no time like the present. Don't go back to the Eastern Palace in a while. Come home with me. 10:00 p.m. Chapter 2546. Arbor didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This Princess Consort Kong truly had the personality of immediately pulling the sails at the mention of wind. After Arbor accompanied Princess Consort Kong around the plum garden, she saw that the Princess Consort was a bit tired. So Arbor helped the Princess Consort to a viewing pavilion on the side to rest. Suddenly, a young maidservant rushed out from the side of the pavilion and mindlessly almost crashed into Princess Consort Kang's arms. The old mama who accompanied and protected the Princess Consort was experienced and reacted quickly. She flew forward to block and push, causing the young maidservant to stumble. The old mama was like a thick wall, blocking the Princess Consort and the young crown princess. Her brows furrowed as she sternly said, "Which branch's maidservant are you? Are you so blind?" That young maidservant fell to the ground, her entire body trembling uncontrollably. She quickly flipped over and respectfully crawled to the ground, kowtowing as she cried, "Noble one, please forgive me, noble one, please forgive me." Princess Consort Kong frowned and looked down at the stains on her embroidered shoes. That maidservant had rushed out suddenly, and when she retreated, half of her foot had stepped into the flower bed on the side. Now, her embroidered shoes were also stained with mud and looked very indecent. That young maidservant hastily kowtowed and said, "Let this servant lead noble one to the pavilion around the corner to change her shoes." Princess Consort Kong nodded. Arbor rose to follow the Princess Consort. Unexpectedly, that young maidservant hastily crawled forward and knelt a few steps, saying urgently, "Noble one, please stay here for now. That pavilion is very small, not even as big as the steepled loft. The two of them won't be able to turn around." Princess Consort Kong coldly glanced at that young maidservant. "What do you mean by wanting the crown princess to stay here? Who wasn't shrewd in the maelstrom of power?" Princess Consort Kong was such an intelligent person that she could discern that maidservant's thoughts at a glance. The young maidservant's face paled in fright, and she stammered, No, this servant doesn't dare to have any other thoughts. It's just that the pavilion is too small," Princess Consort Kong signaled with her eyes. The old mama by her side rolled up her sleeves and was about to step forward. Arbor stopped her and looked at the girl with deep meaning in his eyes. "Imperial Aunt, since someone wants me to stay here, then I'll stay here and take a look. It would be a waste of someone else's efforts. You child, why are you so curious?" Princess Consort Kong glanced at her reproachfully and nodded, saying, "Then I'll be right back." "Okay, I'll stay here and wait for Imperial Aunt." The little fellow spoke expressionlessly. In Princess Consort Kang's eyes, he was exceptionally adorable. He really wanted to pinch the little girl's bun face. She looked so cute. Sir Jojo watched as Princess Kong left. He felt a little strange. What was going on with Princess Kang's happy expression? As if she had been struck by something cute. How could there be anything cute here? Jojo was actually a little curious as to who had arranged such a strange scene. That young maidservant didn't have much acting talent at a glance. She had made it so obvious that her little thoughts had been seen through at a glance. What did the mastermind want to do by using such a clumsy method to forcefully send Princess Kong away? and force her to stay here. The little fellow took out a cup of piping hot spiritual tea from her inner world and sipped it intermittently, waiting calmly in the midst of chaos. She felt like she was waiting for a rabbit to appear. Unfortunately, she wasn't a tortoise. Instead, she was a vicious wolf that could devour human flesh. Chapter 2547. When Zhongli Jiwei and her group of girlfriends arrived at the viewing pavilion, they saw the little girl sitting in the pavilion from afar. She was holding a cup of steaming hot tea and sipping it in small sips. Hearing the sound of footsteps, the little girl didn't even lift her eyelids. Outside the pavilion, Aunt Jing took a few steps forward and reached out to block the path of the girls. She frowned and looked at Zhongli Jiwei. The crown princess is resting here. Unrelated people are not allowed to come near, Aunt Jing said with a straight face. Aunt Jing was an old person in the palace and had been immersed in the palace for decades. She naturally had an aura that could suppress a group of young girls in a matter of minutes. Zhongli Jiwei clearly recognized Aunt Jing. She was very respectful towards Aunt Jing. She stepped forward and curtsied, then smiled and said, Zhongli residence, Zhongli Jiwei greets Aunt Jing. We came specially to pay our respects to Her Highness the Crown Princess. Aunt Jing's gaze fell on Zhongli Jiwei, but her expression didn't change. Wait here. After that, she let Kai Xiao and Kai Chi continue to block the others. She quickly walked into the pavilion and bowed to the little Crown Princess. Crown Princess, Ms. Zhongli and her group are asking for an audience. Arbor had already seen the group of girls. There were about 7 or 8 of them. Zhongli Jiwei was the leader, and the left Prime Minister's daughter, Chen Baojia, was following closely behind. A group of maidservants and biddies surrounded this group of noble girls. For a moment, they were dazzled with jewels, bright and beautiful, and the fragrance of cosmetics assailed their nostrils. Let's see them. Arbor nodded expressionlessly. These people sent the Wangfei away. Weren't they here to cause trouble? Fine. Fighting once was fighting, fighting twice was fighting, fighting countless times was still fighting. Miss Qiao relented, so Aunt Jing let Zhongli Jiwei lead the group of girls into the pavilion. Fortunately, the pavilion was relatively large. After 7 or 8 girls walked in, it wasn't too crowded. Zhongli Jiwei smiled and walked forward. She bent down and curtsied. Greetings to the Crown Princess. Regardless of whether Chen Baojia and the others were happy or not, at least on the surface, they all bowed politely. Arbor didn't make things difficult for them. He nodded and let them rise. Has the Crown Princess been to the elegant court? If not, why don't you let Jiwei lead the way and take the Crown Princess to have a look? Zhongli Jiwei had a courteous look and said with a gentle expression, In our elegant court, the wintersweet blooms are the best. It would be a pity if the Crown Princess missed it. But I still have to wait here for the princess. Arbor said faintly, It doesn't matter. Jiwei left a maid, and the Crown Princess left a maid here to wait for Wangfei. Later, when Wangfei came, she would help Wangfei lead the way to Yiyuan. What does the Crown Princess think? Arbor's dark eyes swept across her face, and a trace of coldness appeared at the corner of his lips. When Zhongli Jiwei met this calm gaze, she didn't know why, but her heart inexplicably trembled. She still had a smile on her face, but the smile unconsciously became a bit forced. What does the Crown Princess think? Zhongli Jiwei asked again. Arbor didn't disappoint her. He nodded very calmly. Miss Zhongli invited me so warmly. This Crown Princess naturally can't disappoint you. Zhongli Jiwei smiled a bit awkwardly. Crown Princess, please. Chen Baojia smiled and chattered. Crown Princess, the plum blossoms in the elegant court are blooming very well. Chapter 2548. There are many precious varieties. It's not commonly seen even in the palace, Chen Baojia said with a grin. Crown Princess, have you seen the black moon plum on Seacombe planet? Oh my, there's also a type that surpasses the snow-white plum. Everyone says that it can compete with the snow domain's divine flower in appearance. Uft. A woman with slender eyes and a sharp chin couldn't resist snickering. Miss Chen, aren't you joking? Where would the lower star domain's snow domain's divine flower come from? The Crown Princess probably hasn't even heard of it. The young crown princess blinked. She tilted her head and pondered before taking out a snow domain's divine flower from her inner world. Are you talking about this? Everyone. The face of the slit-eyed young miss who ridiculed the little stoic instantly flushed red. Some even retreated several steps and glared at the young crown princess in shock. Crown princess, you! Why didn't the snow domain's divine flower attack her? Didn't they say that the snow domain's divine flower was proud and couldn't be touched by normal people? Why didn't anything happen when the young crown princess held that flower in her small paw? When everyone saw that the snow domain's divine flower was actually a complete divine herb with a complete root, they couldn't help but stare at the young crown princess, as if they had seen a ghost. Two young ladies gathered their courage and took a few steps closer. They carefully observed and nodded. It seems to be the snow domain's divine flower. Most of them had only seen this snow domain's divine flower in dossiers. How could they have seen the real thing? Looking at the young crown princess's indifferent expression as she held the snow domain's divine flower, those who didn't know would think that she had only taken a wild flower. How could they know that the young crown princess's 100-herb garden was filled with snow domain's divine flowers? Back then, Duan Yu gave her the storage talisman that contained the snow domain's divine flower. Besides that, there were also all kinds of strange concealed weapons and trinkets inside the storage talisman. When she opened that storage talisman to take a look, she was truly a bit surprised. When she thought of this snow domain's divine flower, she couldn't help but recall the days when she turned into a ferret after turning into a small animal. There were many things that were out of my control. Fortunately, this was all in the past. Jojo, Sama would never tell anyone about his dark history. Humph. The little crown princess didn't let the girls admire it for long before she quietly put away the snow domain divine flower. Ji Xiang, the slender-eyed girl who had mocked the young crown princess and had never heard of the snow domain divine flower, had long since fallen silent. Seeing her blushing and hiding behind the crowd with her tail between her legs, the little crown princess glanced at her and ignored her. Zhongli Jue laughed dryly, then pretended to ask casually, "The crown princess actually carries such a perfect snow domain divine flower with her? I heard that the snow domain divine flower can't be grown unless it's in an extremely cold place." That's right. The crown princess can just throw the snow domain divine flower into her inner world. Will that work? Moreover, doesn't the snow domain divine flower attack people? I saw that the crown princess grabbed it with her hand earlier, but the snow domain divine flower didn't do anything to you. Thus, the little crown princess took out the snow domain divine flower again and handed it to Zhongli Jue. Zhongli Jue carefully reached out to touch the snow domain divine flower's spherical flower. All of a sudden, that flower grew wildly as if it had gone berserk, and all of its petals opened. Seeing that it was about to swallow Zhongli Jue's arm, the girl shrieked and pulled Zhongli Jue back. Chapter 2549. The young crown prince consort stroked this divine flower comfortingly, before calmly putting it away. It turned out that this flower was a flower that could go crazy at any time. If you don't believe me, you can touch it and feel it for yourself. The little crown princess didn't want to say anything to these idiots. She glanced at them and walked into the arched door of the elegant court. Zhongli Jue bit her lips with a pale face. She looked at Chen Baojia, who was behind her and also looked pale. They exchanged glances and nodded. Then, they followed the little crown princess into the elegant court. The girls, who were defeated in the first round, smiled and surrounded them again. It was as if nothing had happened. Zhongli Jue recovered her dignified and elegant appearance, and she led Xiao Mu through the forest and elegant park. She pointed out the various famous flowers and plants in the park, showing them off to the young crown prince consort. My father bought this jasper begonia from a gardener. He spent a lot of money to buy it. At first, the gardener kept it as the treasure of his shop. How could he sell it to my father? Zhongli Jue smiled and said, but the gardener saw that my father was a person who cherished flowers, so he reluctantly gave it to my father after much consideration. My father spent 300,000 spirit coins to buy this famous flower. You can appreciate it. This jasper begonia can bloom all year round. It has a long flowering period, and the flowers are rich and gorgeous. I have heard that Lord Left Prime Minister is the best at appreciating flowers. Today, I see that every flower in this garden is exquisite. The young Crown Prince Consort reached out and took out a pot of tender and juicy jasper begonia. She also liked the jasper begonia very much. It was green in color and magnificent. After she raised one for her grandmother, she asked Little Tree to take the flower seeds and cultivate a batch of them on Paradise Planet for her. Was it rare? What kind of rare flowers and plants didn't she have in Paradise Planet? Showing off. Lord Jojo curled his lips. On the other hand, Miss Zhongli, whose face was once again swollen, had her entire pretty face flushed red. Looking at the pot in the Crown Princess's hands, whether it was in terms of appearance or color, it was much better than the jasper begonia that her family had spent a lot of money to buy. Don't you think this stoic-faced Crown Princess is infuriating? She won't talk to you either. If you mocked her for being ignorant, she would take something out of her inner world and slap you in the face. You didn't even give them a fucking chance to breathe. What was her inner world doing? Was there such a big space to store all these random things? As it turned out, the little Crown Princess really had nothing better to do. At this moment, she took out flowers one by one. The little Crown Princess had all of them, including the Sheng Shui white plum and black moon plum that they had mentioned earlier. They looked plump and glossy, and their appearance was stunning. All the girls. He didn't know what to say. If only I could take back what I just said. This kind of inexplicable face slapping made them feel very angry, okay? Was this little Crown Princess's inner world being used as a warehouse by her? What kind of stuff was she piling up? She took out pots of flowers one by one, as if they didn't take up any space. Suddenly, she wanted to imitate the Crown Princess and show a stoic expression, indicating that she didn't want to talk. It would be best if she could reflect the deep malice that the Crown Princess had towards her. Where did this inexplicable feeling of suffocation come from? Chapter 2550. The young Crown Princess, who didn't want to speak, glanced at the women and saw that they were all pretending to admire the plum blossoms in the garden. Only then did she put away all the pots of flowers. Just now, in order to take them out for others to admire, she even specially asked Sapling to put them in pots and bring them out. Otherwise, it would be hard to explain why every plant had soil and roots. So why did she put them all in her inner world? At this moment, the young Crown Princess was also somewhat dissatisfied. It was clearly these women who were showing off all kinds of precious flowers in front of her, and even mocked her for saying that she had never heard of the snow region's divine flower. The meaning behind their words was that they were mocking her, a nobody who came from the lower star region to the upper three prefectures, for not having seen the world. She was only providing evidence to prove that she had knowledge. So why did these women's faces turn sour and ignore her? A group of narrow-minded people. The young Crown Princess paced to Zhongli Jiwei's side and said with a serious face, "Go and see if the Princess Consort is here." Zhongli Jiwei nodded pretentiously and pulled a servant girl over, asking her to wait for the Princess Consort at the round arched door. Then, she rolled her eyes and turned to Arbor with a smile. "Crown Princess, don't worry. The servant girl I left behind will lead the way for the Princess Consort." Xiaomu nodded expressionlessly as she mocked inwardly. She had already flaunted her wealth and admired the treasured plum blossoms just now. If this Miss Zhongli didn't have any tricks up her sleeve, then she really would be disappointed in her. She spent so much effort to send the Princess Consort away. She couldn't have just wanted to make fun of her, right? Moreover, they probably didn't have enough fun. After all, they were all in a bad mood after being slapped in the face just now. At this moment, the slender-eyed girl, Ji Xiang, suddenly shouted, "Hey, look, that plum blossom is really blooming. Let's go closer and take a look." Zhongli Jiwei's eyes flickered. She took out a handkerchief and pretended to wipe the sweat from the corner of her mouth. She laughed softly and said, "Miss Ji, walk slowly." As Ji Xiang spoke, she quickened her pace and walked towards the plum tree. Looking up at the blooming plum blossoms, Ji Xiang pretended to accidentally twist her leg and slapped the plum tree in front of her. Buzz! A large mass of things flew out from the tree and flew towards the girls in the crowd. Ah! The girls screamed and hurriedly covered their noses and mouths with their handkerchiefs, waving them in front of their faces. Xiaomu creased her brows and sniffed lightly. A dark glint involuntarily flashed through her eyes. Ha! A group of whimsical women actually learned the method of soaking handkerchiefs in insect repellent? In this way, by waving the handkerchief, he could avoid being stung by those stinging bees. Jojo could not help but want to laugh when he saw the 7 or 8 of them carefully wave their handkerchiefs in the same movement. There was a hint of mockery in their eyes. How dare he try to assassinate Jojo with such methods? That's good. Since these women like to play with stinging bees so much, she would give them something to add to the fun. Xiaomu surreptitiously raised her small hand and released a batch of fiery evil poisonous mosquitoes from Paradise Planet. Buzz! The fiery evil mosquitoes raised a pair of small cicada wings, flapped their wings, and flew towards the group of dumbfounded noble women. What's going on? What is that? They saw a mass of unknown black substance flying towards them. Zhongli Jiwei and the others all panicked. Chapter 2551. Taking advantage of the chaos, Arbor added some special powder to the girls, making them very attractive to the stinging bees. Thus, amidst the chaotic screams and cries, the group of noble ladies no longer had the slightest bit of dignity. Each of them fled back and forth in the garden like stray dogs, avoiding the stings of the stinging bees. In order to protect their masters, the servant girls and senior servants hurriedly built a human wall. But what was the use of this? Those stinging bees seemed to have set their eyes on the young ladies. No one knew why they went crazy, but they directly bypassed the maidservants and rushed towards Zhongli Jiwei's group. Arbor sat on a stone stool at the side, calmly looking at the chaotic scene in front of him. When the princess consort hurried over, she saw the little fellow holding a small cup of tea and coldly looking at the chaotic scene in the garden. Princess Consort Kong was completely stunned. Then she calmed down and hurried over. Jojo, what happened? Imperial Aunt, I also don't know what happened. Everything was fine on the way here. But when we came here, that Miss G was careless and bumped into a tree. Coincidentally, she poked a hornet's nest. Now a swarm of stinging bees is chasing after them. It's really surprising. Princess Consort Kong, this little fellow is really too much. Can you not take a sip of tea and talk about a very nervous thing in a slow and unhurried tone? So strange. Sir Jojo blinked and pointed at the woman, who was madly stung by the bees, and ran into a tree. There, it's her, the Jinx Miss G. Princess Consort Kang's group of servant girls and senior servants. Boom! Zhongli Jiwei guided an earth spirit to fly up. Her hands trembled incessantly as she summoned a flying sword from her conscious and slashed it directly at the swarm of stinging bees. But soon, her eyes were replaced by a bright light. That swarm of evil fiery poisonous mosquitoes that stung anyone they saw was extremely terrifying. Zhongli Jiwei and company had the illusion that they were courting death. They saw the swarm of mosquitoes kill their way out of the swarm of stinging bees. All the stinging bees were roasted into a ball of fire by them. A burst of evil fire rushed out of the stinging bees' bodies and burned them to ashes in a few minutes. The fire was still spreading around the garden. The frightened screams of the noble ladies finally attracted all the servants and guards in the front yard. When everyone set out to save everything in the garden, they had to ensure the safety of the ladies first. Arbor sat there expressionlessly drinking tea, and even prepared a cup for the princess consort. However, the princess consort was an ordinary person. She naturally couldn't drink spiritual tea directly. Arbor asked Xiaoshu to brew another pot of imperial Longjing tea, and only added a small piece of tea leaf. Wang Fei's eyes lit up as soon as she drank it. She was full of praise for the little fellow's tea. Poor Madame Zhongli. This plum blossom banquet ended early in such chaos. Many kinds of plum blossoms in the elegant garden were all burned by the fire to the wind to be. However, no one knew that Lady Jojo had already taken advantage of the chaos to collect quite a number of rare plum blossoms. Since she was already here, she couldn't go back empty-handed. The little crown princess thought to herself. When Xiaomu stealthily recalled the sabotaging demonic fire-venomous mosquitoes and helped Princess Consort Kong out of the chaotic courtyard. She just so happened to bump into Chen Baojia. When Sir Jojo saw this girl, he couldn't help but frown slightly. Chapter 2552. When did this Chen Baojiao escape unscathed from that mess? She really did have some tricks up her sleeve. In the chaos just now, Sir Jojo naturally didn't pay much attention to this Chen Baojia. When Chen Baojia saw her and Princess Consort Kong, she hurriedly smiled and greeted them. Then her eyes flashed as she said, "Is the crown princess going back?" Arbor nodded. Chen Baojia smiled and nodded. "Then Baojia will send the crown princess and Princess Consort Kong off." Arbor pursed her lips non-committally. This Miss Chen really didn't treat herself as an outsider. She was only a guest in Zhongli's family, but she actually acted like the host and sent them off. It was really a bit funny. Chen Baojia made a gesture of invitation and sent the little crown princess and Princess Consort Kong out of the main courtyard. Then, she carelessly brushed the hair in front of her forehead and pretended not to care. Then, as if complaining, she said, "Baojia heard the servants at home gossiping, but I don't know if it's true. Right now, the servants are secretly spreading the news that not long after the crown princess returned, she sent the holy nun of the temple to prison today and beat up the eldest son of the king of Jianpain tomorrow. I find it strange. What do these things have to do with them? The servants are even gossiping behind my back, saying how domineering the crown princess is. She won't even let some of the old people in the palace off." Eunuch Li Hongchuan was so angry that he fell ill in bed. "What nonsense are you babbling?" Princess Consort Kang's eyes hardened as she looked at Chen Baojia with dissatisfaction. Chen Baojia hurriedly smiled and said, Yes. I also think that the servants are babbling nonsense. Crown Princess, don't worry. I've already punished them. I guarantee that they won't say another word in the future." Arbor glanced at her coldly. There was a trace of cold light in her pitch-black eyes. When her gaze fell on Chen Baojia, she suddenly felt an extreme chill. Arbor curled her lips and looked at her meaningfully. "Li Hongchuan's godson was sent by you to test me." This was an affirmative sentence. There was no doubt in his tone. Chen Baojia's whole body suddenly stiffened. "What do you think?" The little crown princess glanced at her coldly and asked expressionlessly, "You deliberately sent some cold food over to see if I would get angry? Or do you want to test the limits of my anger? Are you satisfied now?" Li Hongchuan's matter had not even spread within the palace. How could she, the daughter of the Chen family, know about it? It wouldn't be believable if she said she didn't do it. Chen Baojia smacked her lips and suddenly giggled. She twisted her body and said, "Crown Princess, you really know how to joke. You know better than anyone whether I'm joking or not," Arbor said coldly. Chen Baojia felt a chill run down her spine. She couldn't help but take a step back. With a panicked expression, she said, "Princess Consort, Crown Princess, Baojia will send the two of you here. I won't disturb you two any longer." She was going to back out just like that. Xiaomu took a step forward and abruptly blocked her path. "What do you want to probe? Are you trying to test the limits of my tolerance?" "Then I can tell you directly," Arbor said coldly. "Any deception or concealment can step on my limits. I will make her live a life worse than death." Chen Baojia's body trembled. She hurriedly bowed and turned around, feeling like she was fleeing. Arbor watched her departing figure and snorted. Chapter 2553. This Chen Baojia is Empress Dowager Chen's grandniece. Princess Consort Kong asked with a puzzled expression. "When did you have a conflict with Chen Baojia?" Empress Dowager Chen is very protective of her own people. She wasn't afraid of being protective of her people since Chen Baojia wasn't in the right anyway. On the other hand, a mere daughter of the Chen family could command little eunuch Li from the kitchen. This was something worth pondering. It was obvious that Li Hongchuan was someone close to the Empress Dowager. Xiaomu creased her brows, intuitively feeling that something was off. She had no contact with Chen Baojia, and there was no conflict of interest. Why would she suddenly reach out to test her? Wasn't this point worthy of further investigation? As soon as this question popped up, Princess Consort Kong sighed and said, "AI, no wonder this Miss Chen would target you. She and the second miss of the Zhongli family stayed in the Eastern Palace until the last moment, when they had no choice but to be taken back by their family. The second miss of the Zhongli family, and this Miss Chun, have always thought that they were very special. Darling Xiao looked curiously at Princess Consort Kong, a bad premonition emerging in her heart. Imperial Aunt, what do you mean? You're saying that this Chen Baojia and that Zhongli Jiwei have been staying in the Crown Prince's estate in the Eastern Palace for a while? Princess Consort Kong. Oh crap! Did she say something wrong? Ahaha! Princess Consort Kong laughed awkwardly, wanting to salvage the situation for Mo Lien. Ah, what Crown Prince's estate in the Eastern Palace? You probably heard wrong. Imperial Aunt. The little fellow's serious expression made Princess Consort Kong extremely adorable. Okay, Imperial Aunt will tell you everything. Don't be anxious. This isn't a big deal. Our Mo Lien has already resolved it. Princess Consort Kong immediately surrendered, showing that she had no resistance to cute things. Thus, on the way back, Princess Consort Kong told the little crown princess in detail. She started from when Madame Goen sent the beauties, to when Third Fu posted a notice in the central square, asking the officials to take all the noble ladies back. Finally, he talked about how Zhongli Jiwei and Chen Baojia stayed in the crown prince's mansion for nearly 7 days. When General Zhongli arrived, Zhongli's second miss, who was late, was almost killed by third young Master Fu. Princess Consort Kong even gossiped to the young crown princess about the many versions of the story that were circulating in the imperial capital. What did he mean by digging up second Miss Zhongli's experience of enduring humiliation in the crown prince's residence? The crown prince was so unreasonable that he was praised for being ruthless even before he returned to the divine land. He was known throughout the divine land. What did he mean by waiting for Miss Chun to counterattack and enter the crown prince's residence? This kind of messy gossip had been flying all over the capital for nearly a month or two. Arbor! Exclamation point. There was such a thing. Mo Lien had not said a single word to her. When she was not around, a demoness actually went to the crown prince's residence. When Sir Jojo came back to his senses in anger, he realized that he was not at the entrance of the Eastern Palace. Instead, he had followed Princess Consort Kong to Changle Avenue and had already entered the second gate of the crown prince's residence. Jojo blinked his large eyes and looked around curiously. Imperial Aunt? Hey, Imperial Aunt will go change first. You sit here for a while. Why don't you go change as well? Princess Consort Kong said with a smile. No need. Then wait for Imperial Aunt. Let's wait for your Imperial Uncle to come back and have a good meal together tonight. Chapter 2554. The little fellow nodded and sat there a bit angrily. Her mind was still replaying Princess Consort Kang's words. Miss Chen counterattacked and entered the crown prince's estate? Bah! A woman like Chen Baojia in her dreams. She now fully understood what Chen Baojia was trying to probe. She wanted to test her temperament. Presumably, they thought that she, a village girl, who followed the crown prince from the lower star domain to the divine province, should be a meek and submissive soft bun with no temper. She didn't expect the little fellow to be a lit firecracker that could explode a person into nothingness at any moment. If she had a soft temperament, this Miss Chen would probably use all kinds of methods to forcefully approach her, and then slowly scheme. Chen Baojia should be especially regretting that lousy mouth of hers right now. She gave away some clues, and let her see through the truth. The little fellow scrunched up her little face angrily, and rubbed the sleeve in her hands. When Louis Ran walked in indignantly, she just happened to see this otherworldly handsome face. Her chest ached from anger as soon as she saw him. After all, she had entered the palace with Princess Consort Kong. Yet when she came back, she didn't see Princess Consort Kang's carriage at all when she left the palace gates. When she turned back to ask Miss Chen, she found out that Princess Consort Kong had already left with the crown princess in a carriage. Louis Ran was so angry that her face and stomach hurt, and her entire body involuntarily clamored with painful hatred. Princess Consort Kong actually abandoned her in the palace like this. Was she shameless? This was something that had never happened before. Princess Consort Kong adopted her. Although they weren't very close because of their incompatible personalities, Princess Consort Kong still gave her enough face in front of outsiders. But now, Princess Consort Kong actually directly threw her away and intimately brought this stoic-faced crown prince consort back. Luiran was so angry that her mouth was crooked. Her lips trembled as she pointed at Arbor. What are you sitting here for? Arbor looked back at her and said calmly, waiting for Imperial Aunt. We'll eat dinner together tonight. Who's eating with you? Luiran shouted, but immediately realized that she had misspoken. She glared fiercely at Arbor, and before Arbor could react, she rushed out of the door and ran all the way to her courtyard. Arbor looked at her back in disdain, but didn't say anything. What was there for her to be calculative with a fool whose IQ hadn't fully grown yet? In the evening, the old prince returned as expected. Princess Consort Kong hurriedly pulled Arbor over with a smile and personally introduced him to the old prince. The old prince was very happy. After talking with Arbor for a while, he felt even more satisfied. Thus, the couple had Sir Jojo stay behind to have a meal together. Luiran was sitting at the table like a cold machine, constantly releasing cold air. However, the three of them treated her as if she was invisible, minding their own business and completely ignoring Luiran's existence. Right at this moment, the steward jogged in. He wiped the sweat on his head and hastily said, "Reporting to Your Highness, Princess Consort. His Highness the Crown Prince has arrived. The carriage has already arrived at the door." Princess Consort Kong was startled. The old prince couldn't help but laugh and scold. He threw down his chopsticks and walked out. This little bastard. He must be here to find a wife. How long has it been? And he's already here. Chapter 2555. Princess Consort Kong couldn't help but burst into laughter. She nodded and said, "Of course. I'll go meet this little brat." The old prince had an odd expression on his face as he winked at Princess Consort Kong. This little brat, ever since he came back, he hasn't stepped out of the main door. He's been hiding in the Eastern Palace and won't see anyone. If I hadn't kidnapped his wife here today, I wouldn't have been able to see him. Luiran raised her eyes in surprise and looked towards the door. His Highness the Crown Prince was here. As they spoke, Emolien had already strode in. At that moment, the old prince had just reached the door, and the two of them almost bumped into each other. The old prince couldn't help but scold. "Brat, you're running so fast." Everyone in the hall, only someone like the old prince, who didn't abstain from meat and vegetables, dared to call His Highness the Crown Prince a brat. Emolien immediately saw his wife sitting next to Princess Consort Kong. The little fellow's mouth was stuffed with food. She raised her head to glance at him, then snorted at him and actually looked away. Not good. Prince Mo's heart skipped a beat, and he hurriedly wanted to walk around the old prince and head inside. His wife was fine when she left this morning. Why was she suddenly ignoring him now? Something must have happened today. Prince Kong blocked Emolien and patted him hard on the shoulder. "Brat, don't you see your uncle?" Emolien's mouth twitched. To be honest, he really hadn't seen this old man. He looked up and saw a hale and hearty middle-aged man, who was close to 50 years old, glaring at him. Emolien greets Imperial Uncle. Prince Emo helplessly curtsied. "Stinky brat, you only see your wife?" Prince Kong fumed. "Look at this good-for-nothing. Your Imperial Aunt is only inviting the Crown Princess over for a meal. Look at how anxious you are." Looking at how he was rushing to Prince Kang's estate, he must have rushed over as soon as he received the news. How could he have such a stupid eldest nephew? Didn't they just get married not long ago? He was completely taken advantage of. Wouldn't he be a slave to his wife in the future? TSK. The more he looked at this stupid face, the angrier he got. He was practically carved from the same mold as his father. They were all so stupid. Prince Emo was dumbfounded. He didn't know if it was just his imagination. He felt that the way the old prince looked at him was a little strange. As if he was looking at an idiot. Was that even possible? He was Prince Emo, known to the whole world as the brilliant and talented Prince Emo. "Imperial Uncle, don't block your nephew's way." Emolien hurriedly bypassed Prince Kong, who was blocking her way. She hurried to the round table and squeezed her way to Jojo's side and sat down. Emolian reached out to hold his wife's hand. She felt wronged. Jojo, why aren't you coming home? Mr. Jojo looked unhappy and looked at him from head to toe. Why didn't you tell me? What? About Chen Baojia and Zhongli Jiwei. His Highness the Crown Prince was at a loss. He had never heard of these two people's names. The old prince was amused when he heard this. He picked up his chopsticks to pick up some food and hurriedly explained to the Crown Prince. Hey, I know. Aren't they the women that the National Security Agency sent to your estate? These two people, one is old Chen's daughter, and the other is from General Zhongli's estate. I heard that they stayed at the Crown Prince's estate for several days and refused to leave. In the end, it was that little brat Fu San who drew his sword and wanted to kill them that they were taken home. Little brat, I say, you really didn't do it properly. Night watch, night watch, night watch. The monthly votes were over 2,000, and tomorrow was also 10 chapters later. Chapter 2556. The old prince's gloating expression was truly an eyesore. Prince Emo thought for a long while before he recalled that it was true. This was all the trouble that the old woman from the National Security Agency had caused for her. At that time, he had asked Third Fu to deal with it, and had chased all the women away. So now what kind of trouble had arisen? Prince Emo instantly felt an inexplicable sense of crisis. Thinking back to what his wife had said earlier, he suddenly understood something and hurriedly said, I don't even know if the women sent by the National Security Agency are round or flat. After I asked Third Fu to deal with them, I forgot about it myself. Jojo, I didn't hide it from you. Really? In all honesty, he really didn't take this matter to heart at all. Sir Jojo thought about it and agreed. Looking at this man's blank expression just now, he must have forgotten about this matter long ago. A bunch of vulgar women didn't have the right to make his lotus remember. Humph. The little fellow's tense little face relaxed slightly. She glanced at him from the corner of her eyes and snorted softly. Crown Prince Emo hastily rubbed her small hand. He understood this little one very well. Don't look at how her small face was still taut right now. Compared to when she first entered the room, the oppressive atmosphere around her was much more relaxed now. The old prince observed the young couple as he picked up food. He secretly disdained him in his heart. This little Emo looks quite strong, but he's just a paper tiger in front of his wife. Useless fellow. He's a disgrace to the Emo family. While the old prince was disdainful of little Emo, he had completely forgotten that he was worse than a paper tiger in front of Princess Kong. That's enough. Looking at you two is an eyesore to my eyes. The old prince waved his hand and said to the attendant beside him, Give this prince a bowl of rice. Emolien's eyes twitched. He turned to look at the old prince. Imperial uncle, this is the first time you've met my wife. Have you given her a present? The old prince fumed with anger. Didn't your imperial aunt already give it to her? Don't think that I didn't see it. That bracelet is on the little guy's wrist. Imperial aunt is imperial aunt, and you are you. Emolien pursed her lips. Imperial uncle is so rich, and has so many houses. How can you be so stingy? If you don't give me this greeting gift, my wife won't call you imperial uncle anymore. Bastard. Wife slave. Serves you right for being eaten alive by the little stoic. I will never sympathize with you in the future. Emo Lufeng scolded him in his heart. He took out a dozen pieces of paper from his ring and slapped them on the table. Take them, take them. It was only then that Emolien happily accepted it and stuffed it into his wifey's hands. Xiao Xiao, keep it well, keep it well. When I have time, I can accompany you to take a look at the deeds to these manors, shops, and gardens. Oh, by the way, Uncle Emperor, I heard that you have the title deed of a hot spring villa. Is it inside? The corner of Emo Liufeng's eyes twitched violently. He wished he could slap this bastard to death. The title deed to Half Moon Cliff's splendid villa is inside. The old prince said huffily. When the little fellow heard this, she knew that this must be a pretty nice garden. She had never heard of this Half Moon Cliff before. Perhaps it was rather famous in the Emo Kingdom capital. Her expression relaxed again, and she was a bit happy. Imperial uncle, do you have fields? Emo Lufeng. Princess Consort Kong laughed loudly and nodded while holding Arbor's small hand. Yes, yes, yes. Your imperial uncle has a lot of fields. There's a large field at the foot of Half Moon Cliff. How about I give it all to you? Chapter 2557. Sir Jojo nodded happily. When she had first arrived in Dragon Flame City, she had been living in poverty. Now, with her royal uncle's gifts, she could finally live comfortably. At this moment, Sir Jojo had completely forgotten that Emo Lian's father was the ruler of this mainland. Emo Lufeng had the habit of eating rice for every meal. If he skipped a meal, he would feel famished. However, when the rice was served, Sir Jojo's nose twitched, and he looked at Emo Lufeng in surprise. The old prince felt a little uncomfortable under this little fellow's gaze. He yelled at her. "What are you looking at? Hurry up and eat, then scram." Princess Consort Kong chuckled, and personally scooped a bowl of soup for the old prince. She whispered to Jojo, "Your royal uncle is angry out of humiliation." Arbor nodded his little head. Meanwhile, Louis Ran, who was sitting at the corner of the round table, and being ignored by everyone, was so angry that she was trembling. From the moment Crown Prince Emo walked through the door, Louis Ran's infatuated gaze hadn't left him once. That kind of intense impact to her soul caused her entire soul to clamor and tremble. At that moment, Louis Ran felt that her heart, which had been sealed for 20 years, seemed to have seen the light. All of a sudden, her entire heart was lit up. When she read those storybooks in the past, she always felt that the story of the meeting between a scholar and a beauty was very fake, and made people scoff at it. It was only today that Louis Ran felt that perhaps what was described in those storybooks might not be completely fake. At least, the feeling that her heart was moved today was very real. Louis Ran was about to stand up and bow, and show her face in front of the Crown Prince so that he could see her. However, she saw the Crown Prince stride over and sit down beside the Crown Princess. After that, the situation quickly spiraled out of her control. She watched as the old prince took out house deeds, land deeds, and land deeds from his space ring, and tossed them to the Crown Princess as a meeting gift. Louis Ran was so angry that her teeth were sore and her cheeks hurt. She could not recover. Why? She wanted to scream madly. She didn't have a single one of these house deeds, farmland deeds, and land deeds. Why should she, as their adopted daughter, not get anything? Now, without even asking for her opinion, they were going to give this property to an outsider? In addition, there were 5 people at the table. She was like a little pitiful turtle curled up at the side of the table, while the other 3 people's topics revolved around the Crown Prince Consort. How could she not be angry and hate this injustice, and clench her hands until they bled? The hatred in Louis Ran's heart was overflowing, and she could not suppress the anger that was about to erupt from her chest. Her body was shrouded in a layer of gloomy qi, constantly emitting a low pressure, which scared the little servant girl standing beside her. What was wrong with her young miss? Ever since Wang Fei had brought this adopted daughter back from the Lu family, Miss would occasionally give off a dark and gloomy presence. When he didn't speak, he sat there like a spirit behind his back. His eyes were also very gloomy. It was as if black gas was being emitted from the inside of his body. It was very uncomfortable to look at. Although Miss would occasionally complain that the old prince and old princess consort were unfair to her, and that they didn't dote on her enough, she only dared to complain behind her back. Usually, she could only play a little tricks, and her cultivation was very ordinary. So if you really wanted her to do something, she really didn't have the ability to do it. Chapter 2558. This was a coward with a dark heart, but not a dark life. Her personal maidservant wanted to remind her young miss not to wear down the old prince and the princess consort's patience. If she angered the 2 of them, they would directly send her young miss to the Lu family and not support this young miss in the future. Wouldn't that be even more of a loss? Louis Ran did not have the life to turn dark at all. She could only grumble about many things in her heart. Imperial Aunt, this is for you. Sir Jojo took out a small white porcelain bottle from his inner world and placed it in front of Princess Consort Kong. The princess consort could not help but be slightly startled. She said with a smile, "Didn't I return the gift before? It's not the same." Arbor blinked and urged her, This is a black-grade beautifying pill. Take it now. When Luiran heard that, she suddenly sneered. Do you think Mother has never taken a beautifying pill before? Mother has even taken an immortal-grade beautifying pill before. But what use was that? Princess Consort Kong could not cultivate after all, so she aged faster than ordinary cultivators. She was only in her early 50s now, but her body was already plump. Moreover, the wrinkles on her face were increasing day by day. This woman self-righteously took out a black-grade beautifying pill to curry favor with the princess consort. It was simply laughable. Arbor rolled his eyes at Luiran, then said with an indifferent expression, if the amount of medicinal ingredients is not enough, or the refining technique is not good enough, even a god-grade beautifying pill is still useless. You. Luiran glared at him. Arbor had already shifted his gaze away, and only urged Princess Consort Kong. Imperial Aunt, try it. Okay. Princess Consort Kong smiled as she took a beautifying pill from the small jade bottle. Luiran sneered at the side, deliberately mystifying. Could it be that this woman from the lower star domain had medicinal pills that were better than their divine continents? She did not believe it. Luiran snorted, then looked towards Princess Consort Kong. She originally wanted to say a few bad things about the crown princess in front of Princess Kong. But when she saw the two rather obvious wrinkles and indentations on Princess Consort Kang's blissful face slowly diminishing at a visible rate, her eyes almost popped out of their sockets. No, it was impossible. Was this a demonic technique? Otherwise, even a god-tier face-preserving pill wouldn't be able to fight against aging so quickly. She had also eaten the beautifying pills sold by Jinhua Workshop. But if they ate it, they would still grow wrinkles, and they would still grow fat. Princess Consort Kong raised her hand to touch her own face. She also felt that her face seemed to have become much smoother. She couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. This wasn't an illusion, right? Quickly, Dan Ling, bring a mirror for this princess to see. The maidservant named Dan Ling giggled as she hurriedly brought a mirror over. She cried out in surprise, Wang Fei, it's not an illusion. It's true. Your skin looks a lot smoother, and it's shining like a pearl. Ayaya, this really is a beautifying pill? Princess Consort Kong looked joyfully at Sir Jojo sitting beside her. This beautifying pill's effects are so good. Child, why did you give it to me? I'm already so old, and I'm already like this no matter what beautifying pill I eat. Isn't it better if you keep it for yourself? Sir Jojo blinked. Prince Mo, who was sitting at the side, couldn't help but twitch the corners of his eyes. Sure enough, he saw his wifey take out a small stew pot. Chapter 2559. There was a whole pot of pills inside, a whole pot full of them. They were all Jojo's products, black-grade beautifying pills. Sir Jojo said with a puzzled expression. Imperial Aunt, I have plenty here. Do you still want to eat more? But one of these black-grade beautifying pills should be enough. It can resist aging for 100 years. Eating more won't be good for the body. Prince Kong and his wife, they felt like their eyeballs were about to fall out, okay? Why did they feel like this stoic-faced little fellow, although she didn't smile from beginning to end, was especially comical when she did things? Cough. Mo Lien coughed lightly, and hurriedly had the little fellow stuff the pot of pills back into her inner world. This child wasn't keeping a low profile again, was she? Prince Kong asked in a strange tone. Did you refine these by yourself? You're an alchemist? What's your current alchemist level? Mystic. Fuck, a black-grade alchemist who wasn't even 16 years old. Prince Kong rolled his eyes at the sky, and immediately wanted to calm down. Moreover, he suddenly felt like he couldn't continue the conversation. What exactly was going on? It must have been hard on his old wife to chat with the little crown princess. All the way from the Plum Blossom Banquet, what exactly was there to talk about? The old prince was puzzled. According to the little fellow's style of speaking, what exactly was there to talk about? Your Highness, isn't Jojo very cute? Princess Consort Kong grinned as she held Arbor's small hand and boasted to the old prince. Your Mo family doesn't have such a cute girl. I don't think the girls from your brother's families are all that great. None of them can compare to our Jojo. Mo Lien deeply agreed. The old prince. His old wife had inexplicably become the crown princess's die-hard fan. For some reason, the old prince felt faintly sorrowful. However, he was still very happy to see the princess consort glowing and exuding confidence. Wang Fei seemed to have become 10 years younger. Even the white hair on her temples had disappeared. This profound level beautifying pill that the little girl refined, needless to say, the effect was really the difference between heaven and earth when compared to those trashy goods circulating on the market. Brat, you have a good eye for finding a wife. The old prince snorted and reluctantly praised Prince Mo. He poked at the rice in his bowl with his chopsticks, and suddenly felt like he didn't want to eat it. The little girl suddenly took out a small and delicate rice bucket from her inner world. A faint fragrance immediately drifted into the old prince's nose, causing him to involuntarily sniff. His eyes lit up as he asked, "What is this smell? Why does it smell so good? Is it rice?" "Yes." The little girl opened the lid of the rice bucket, and the fragrance immediately spread out. The old prince's appetite was aroused, and he was almost drooling. "Io, you little kid, really? Why did he hide such good food? Quick, give Imperial Uncle a bowl." The old prince moved quickly to the side of the round table, picked up a spatula, and dug into the rice bucket. "Why is your rice so delicious?" The old prince was also a weirdo. He wasn't at all bothered by the fact that the little girl had brought a bucket of rice into her inner world. He was just curious about what kind of rice it was. Speaking of which, he was a big shot who had eaten quite a bit of rice. For someone like him who had to eat rice for every meal, he was very particular about the quality of the rice. "Because this is holy rice," the little fellow said proudly. Holy rice? He had heard of ancient holy weapons, but he had never heard of holy rice. Chapter 2560. This was undeniably holy rice. Planted in holy land and nurtured with holy water. What else could it be other than holy rice? Where did you buy it? The old prince liked the soft, glutinous and fragrant texture from the first bite. He almost swallowed his own tongue in one bite. He was someone who could eat 3 bowls of white rice with even salted vegetables today. He finished 5 bowls of rice in one go. Later, the princess consort reminded him not to overeat, so he resentfully stopped. "You can't buy it anywhere," Arbor said calmly. "I planted it." The old prince immediately moved his stool closer to Arbor. He felt that Mo Lien, who was between him and Jojo, was particularly obstructive, so he pushed him back. He leaned his head closer and revealed a rare cheerful smile. "Jojo, can you share some of this rice with Imperial Uncle?" Mo Lien. Imperial Uncle was so close to her, yet he looked so disdainful. She really didn't know if she was his nephew. "Put it in a storage talisman." Arbor thought for a moment, then nodded. "Storage talisman?" The old prince stilled, then asked in confusion, "I don't have a storage talisman." Arbor turned to look at Princess Consort Kong. "It's with Imperial Aunt." The princess consort was also startled. Then she thought of something, and had Danling bring over the square box that the crown princess had given her. When she opened it, she saw that a blue storage talisman made of ebony was lying quietly in the box. Next to it was a box about the size of a rouge. Inside it was a small light red pill. Prince Kong was truly amazed this time. He reached out to pick up the ebony piece, and examined it carefully. He asked excitedly, "This thing? It's really a storage talisman? Can the princess consort use it?" Arbor nodded. Yes. The princess consort had given her the exquisite fire brocade bracelet as a space container. Considering that it would be inconvenient if she didn't have a space, Arbor had given the storage talisman to the princess consort as a return gift. The red pill was the warm jade pill, which was used to treat the body's cold illness. The princess consort's body had been cold since she was young, so eating it could suppress it for a period of time. What she thought at that time was that she couldn't refuse an elder's gift. Since she had taken away the protective bracelet that protected her from the cold, then she should help Wang Fei cure her cold illness. The princess consort had never used a storage talisman before, so she was extremely curious. Under Arbor's guidance, the princess dripped a drop of blood to open the talisman. Sure enough, she could use the talisman as usual. "Imperial Aunt, don't worry and use it." After a while, I'll make a jade talisman for you. You can wear it on your body as a pendant, and it won't be conspicuous." The old prince understood the meaning behind the little girl's words. He stuttered, You did it." "Yes. You're a talisman master." "Yes." Emolien's lips twitched. Strange, why does this conversation sound so familiar? The old man was speechless. Why did he feel that today's stimulation was a little too big? Who was the one who nagged in front of him that the little crown princess was just a village girl from the lower star domain? How could she be worthy of His Highness the Crown Prince? They even hoped that he would go to the emperor and slander him. They hoped that he could help His Highness the Crown Prince resolve this annoying marriage, so that he could find another noble lady, or a valiant woman, who was worthy of the Crown Prince. These people should really come over and see if the little Crown Princess, who was both a pill refiner and talisman master, was as unbearable as they thought. If I listened to them, I'd be out of my mind. The Princess Consort was really far-sighted. Pill refiners and talisman masters were just not well known yet. It would be a fool not to befriend such a genius. Chapter 2561. The old prince happily let the Princess Consort use a storage talisman to catch the half-empty holy rice. He was smiling so widely that the corners of his eyes were wrinkled. "Ignore him." Princess Consort Kong took Arbor's hand and smiled as she said, "Jojo, why don't you stay at Imperial Aunt's place tonight?" Emolien's eyelids twitched, and he promptly declined politely. "Auntie, Xiao Xiao and I have just returned to the Eastern Palace, and there are still some things that need to be put back in place. Let's visit Uncle and Auntie again, after we've taken care of everything." Princess Consort Kong reluctantly sent Arbor and Emolien to the door. It was cold and windy outside, so Arbor told her to stop. However, the old prince insisted on seeing them out personally. Both of them were smart enough to know that the old prince had something to say to them. After they exited the hall, the two of them left. Arbor looked at the old man with a half-smile. He was not very tall, but his shoulders were very broad. He was a cultivator who was about to enter the immortal realm. Compared to ordinary people, he certainly looked much younger. However, his current appearance was more than 10 years older than his actual age of more than 50. He could not even compare to ordinary people his age. Ahem. The old prince coughed awkwardly and blushed. "Lass, don't tell your imperial aunt about this, okay?" Emolien did not know what the two of them were talking about. She glanced at the old prince in confusion. Why did his uncle's tone have a hint of awkwardness and pleading? Why? Arbor was almost muttering to himself. The old prince seemed a little embarrassed by the question. He put on airs in front of the two juniors and coughed coldly. "What do you mean why?" "No reason." "All right, you two brats, get out of my sight." Emo Lufeng flew into a rage out of humiliation. He chased the young couple out of the door, caught up with the carriage, and immediately had Steward Wang close the door. Emolien could not help but be taken aback by his sudden change in attitude. What happened? Prince Emo couldn't help but ask after boarding the carriage. Why did she feel that her uncle was moody? He had no idea what was going on. Jojo snorted at him. Emolien felt like her heart was about to melt. She quickly reached out and pulled the little girl into her arms. She lowered her head and kissed her on the forehead. "Jojo, don't be angry, okay? I'll tell you everything in the future, no matter if it's big or small or boring." "Mine." The little guy raised his head and solemnly warned the man. "Mine." Emolien could not help but laugh. She hugged her and nodded repeatedly. "Yes, yes, I'm yours. From top to bottom, inside and out. Even a strand of my hair belongs to you, okay?" Only then was the little fellow satisfied. She felt a little better and nodded. "It's good that you know." Emolien could not help but kiss her tender little face twice. "Then can you tell me now, what were you and Uncle talking about?" "Uncle was eating an aging pill with rice." "Were you surprised?" "Were you surprised?" When the bowl of rice was served, Sir Jojo could smell that something was wrong. To put it bluntly, this aging pill was actually a type of poison. If one took one every 7 days, it could imperceptibly change a person's appearance. Simply put, it would make a person age little by little. In the beginning, Lin Mingya found the old prince pleasing to the eye because of the existence of the princess. Chapter 2562. But now, Lady Qiao Qiao was in awe of the old prince. It was easy to say that I would grow old with you, but it was extremely difficult to do. Emo Lufeng was a cultivator, but Lu Lanyan was just an ordinary person. She would definitely grow old before him. No matter how many beautifying pills she took, or how many beautifying skincare products she used, she couldn't stop her body from aging as time passed. Emo Lufeng secretly took the aging pills and grew old with his wife. If his wife had 2 more wrinkles on her face, he would work hard to have 4 more. If his wife gained weight, he would work hard to gain weight as well. He would even look much older than his wife. This was love. He would fulfill his promise without hesitation. He would grow old with her. Sir Jojo sniffled and nuzzled his head in Emolien's arms. I'm a little touched. While hugging his wifey, Emolien also recovered from his shock and inwardly mused. Uncle is truly a man. Looks like the Emo family isn't all crooked after all, Arbor commented. Prince Emo didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Don't judge us by the standards of the Crown Prince of Jianpain. There are many people in the Emo family who are as good as me. I understand. It's the same principle as how bad bamboo produces good bamboo shoots. Arbor nodded seriously. Emolien. These words sounded a bit strange. The evil bamboo here couldn't be referring to his father, right? Auntie's cold must have been brought out of her mother's womb. Although it's not easy to treat, it's not completely impossible. Miss Qiao waved her little fists in high spirits. Tomorrow, I'll write a prescription for Imperial Uncle and ask him to go by the herbs first. After Imperial Aunt takes the warm jade pill and her body stabilizes a little, I'll give her acupuncture and medicine. Thank you for your hard work, Jojo. Emolien rubbed his chin against her little head. Arbor reached out to touch his chin. It's nothing. It's what I should do. The Princess Consort was so good. She also hoped that her life would get better and better. Jojo. Emolien's eyes deepened, and he couldn't help but lower his head. His thin lips gently covered her lips, and they were entangled for a while. His little wife was so wonderful that he didn't want to let go of her for even a second at this time. In a remote corner of the Mu family's Tinglong courtyard, a big storm was brewing. The moment Xiao Yingchun returned home, she collapsed in her mother's arms like a deflated ball. She wept and repeatedly recounted the events that happened in the afternoon. Madame Li was so angry that her whole body trembled. She sternly shouted, "She really dares to say that? Mom, what should we do now?" Xiao Yingchun's eyes reddened in fear. That bitch wants to deal with me, Mom. That slut really sent someone to bring a message to the Mu family's patriarch. She said that if the Mu family doesn't deal with me within 2 days, she will personally deal with me. Mother, what should we do now, Mother? I don't want to die. Xiao Tsong raised his eyebrows and said angrily, I already told you not to let your imagination run wild, but you didn't listen. See if something has happened now. Eldest sister, it's one thing for Mom to be brainless, but why are you so brainless as well? Tell me, how many times have you suffered at the hands of Arbor? You've forgotten the pain after the scars have healed. I think you have a pig's brain. Shut up. Madame Li angrily shouted. She hugged her daughter and shrieked. That bitch Arbor, she's not giving us a way out. The 3 of us have to die. Chapter 2563. Since that's the case, what else is there to say? The 3 of us will fight it out with her. Let's see who can't win. Madame Neli shrieked and flung Xiao Yingchun aside. She picked up a kitchen knife and ran out of the kitchen. Xiao Yingchun was dumbfounded. Xiao Tsong was so angry that his nose was crooked. He stepped forward and stopped Madame Neli. Mom, what are you trying to do now? Do you think you can defeat the crown princess with a kitchen knife? Was there something wrong with this old woman's brain? Xiao Tsong seriously doubted whether it was a wise decision to follow this brainless mother and daughter to the Mu family of the Divine Province. They already said that impersonation wouldn't last long. As long as this person from Arbor appeared, all the impersonation would be exposed. Yet the mother and daughter pair were immersed in the Mu family's extravagant riches and honor. How could they be willing to walk out on their own? She's already the high and mighty crown princess. Damn bitch, she still won't let us go. Ah, look at what she's doing. Is that humane? Ah, she's the crown princess. Who wouldn't snatch it from her? Why did she come to snatch your older sister's status as the Mu family's young miss? Is there something wrong with her? She's the crown princess. Does she need the status of the Mu family's young miss? Why can't she let your older sister enjoy life? Your older sister is her elder sister from the same clan. Everyone's bloodline is natural. What's the meaning of this? She just won't let us have a good life. If she were to stand in front of me right now, I'd slap her to death. This bitch was taught by that petty Wei Ziqin. She's an unpresentable thing. Xiao Tsong was dumbfounded. Even if the person before him was his mother, he had to admit that he was also dumbfounded by his mother's blatant bandit talk. Mom, she's the Mu family's young miss. How could she have a natural bloodline with us? She's the one who's related to the Mu family by blood. Xiao Tsong was speechless. His mother actually had the cheek to say that someone else came to snatch his older sister's status as the Mu family's young miss. Even a man like him blushed when he heard this. However, I've been a village woman for decades. Throwing a tantrum and rolling on the ground, I only know these few tricks. From the bottom of his heart, Xiao Tsong did not want to provoke that she-devil arbor again. According to him, since they had already been seen through, it was better to leave the Mu family as soon as possible, so that both sides would not be in a good situation. Unfortunately, the right to speak was in his mother's hands, so there was nothing he could do. He wanted to persuade his mother again, but when he saw Madame Li holding a kitchen knife and looking for someone to kill, he felt a headache coming on. When Mu Qingya came over, she saw such a noisy scene. A trace of disdain slid across her eyes as she coldly looked at the three clown-like cripples in front of her and coldly said, "Pack up your things and move out of Ting Lan's courtyard immediately." "Why should I?" Madame Li shrieked like a hen whose neck was being strangled. "Why? Because you deceived the Mu family by pretending to be the Mu family's daughter and swindled food, drinks, and resources from the Mu family." Mu Qingya said bluntly. Now her identity has been exposed. What else is there to say? Madame Li rolled her eyes and hurriedly said with an apologetic smile, "Madam, you can't just believe that our young miss is an impostor based on that woman's one-sided words. What other evidence do you want?" Mu Qingya shouted angrily. Chapter 2564. You probably don't know, but our Mu family has a kind of bloodline talisman that can detect whether the Mu family's descendants are of the clan's bloodline. Mu Qingya sneered. "This madam will give you face and let you pack your things and scram. If the bloodline talisman really detects your identities as imposters," Mu Qingya harumphed, "then you will be sentenced to death for the crime of messing with the clan's bloodline." Xiao Yingchun widened her eyes in panic and retreated several steps in fright. Her back bumped into a tree. Madame Neli also panicked. Her voice trembled as she tried to put on a brave front. "You're bluffing." Mu Qingya looked at the three people before her, as though she was looking at clowns. She sneered. "Don't you think this kind of lie is too despicable? This kind of lie can be exposed in minutes, yet you can still bite the bullet and continue. All right, I don't want to waste my breath with you. Pack your things and scram." Mu Qingya coldly glanced at Madame Neli, who was standing at the front. Madame Neli, this stupid woman, was brandishing a kitchen knife in her hand. How laughable. Did she think that in the current world, holding a kitchen knife in one's hand could decide the fate of the world? Mu Qingya's face was cold as she glanced at the group of servants behind her. The servants who had been brought to Ting Lan's small courtyard were all rough servants who were very strong. They quickly twisted Madame Neli's arm, snatched her kitchen knife, and threw it on the ground. Madame Neli started to wail, and her wails could be heard throughout the entire Mu residence. Mu Qingya disdainfully swept a glance at them, and didn't say anything more. She directly had the servants drag the three people out of the door. Xiao Tsong was better off since he was willing to leave on his own. Seeing that he was tactful, the servants didn't catch him. His mother and sister, on the other hand, were crying and throwing a tantrum as they were dragged out like little chicks. Along the way, they attracted countless servants who pointed and gossiped. When they reached the Mu estate's back door, Xiao Yingchun immediately saw Mu Xingchun's tall figure. She couldn't help but wail and shriek, big brother, save me, big brother." Mu Jingrui looked at Xiao Yingchun like he was looking at an idiot and couldn't resist saying, "You've already completely exposed your identity. So how can you still have the face to call Xingchen big brother? Stardust is not your big brother. We don't even know your name. Seventh uncle, there's no need to speak to her." Mu Xingchen coldly glanced at her and indifferently said, "Just throw her out." If they were thrown out, the three of them would probably starve to death on the streets in 2 days. After all, Xiao Tsong was just a small mystic cultivator and was basically a cripple. If he had to drag down the mother and daughter, who kept making a fuss, how I wish them a wonderful life. Go to the central street and post a notice to all the major sects and aristocratic families. Just say that someone is impersonating our Mu family's daughter, who has been wandering outside for many years. She doesn't know the general situation and doesn't know etiquette. The Mu family has already cleared out the imposter. Mu Xingchen knew why Mu Qingya was doing this. It was for the sake of the Mu family to send a message to Jojo. It was to make a stand and an attitude. The Mu family did not want to be enemies with the crown princess. The Mu family was obedient. Mu Xingchen took a deep breath and swept a disgusted glance at Xiao Yingchun and the others. Then, he turned around and crossed the threshold with Mu Jingrui, not sparing Xiao Yingchun and her daughter another glance. Xiao Yingchun collapsed on the floor and wailed loudly. She cried so hard that she almost couldn't make a sound, but she was still sobbing and wailing. Chapter 2565. How could Mu Qingya be willing to listen to her wailing? She cursed, "Jinx," and ordered the servants to close the courtyard doors, completely blocking the three beggar-like mother and daughter outside the room. Xiao Yingchun crawled forward and slammed on the door as she wailed, "At least let me pack my things." Her change of clothes and jewelry were all in a bundle in the room. If she had known that the Mu family would act so quickly and kick them out of the house, she wouldn't have wailed and wasted so much time with her mother. She would have gone to pack her things long ago. "It's over, it's over, it's over. There's nothing left." Xiao Yingchun collapsed on the stone block in front of the door, as though she had lost her parents. She abruptly turned and pounced on the door, slamming it twice as she shrieked, "Open the door! Open the door!" Xiao Tsong coldly glared at the mother and daughter and shouted angrily, "Are you satisfied now? Living like this? There was no way he could go on like this. If you want to make a fuss, go ahead. I'm leaving first." Xiao Yingchun abruptly turned her head and stared at Xiao Tsong flabbergasted. Xiao Tsong didn't even look back. He was a man of his word, and turned to walk toward the back alley of the Mu estate. He was no longer willing to stay by this foolish mother and daughter's side and suffer misfortune again and again. They could only rely on themselves in the future, on how they would walk, and how they would end up. Although he was very bewildered by the current situation, everyone had to find their own path in life. He couldn't always rely on others. Xiao Tsong, who had learned from his mistakes and deeply understood that Arbor wasn't a place to be trifled with, felt that this matter wouldn't end so easily. Mom and sister were already hopelessly stupid. What awaited Madame Nei Li and her daughter was probably even bigger trouble. He withdrew and left suavely. Thinking about it later, it was a wise move. He was too weak to take revenge, so he could only silently wish Madame Nei Li and Xiao Yingchun the best, that they didn't court death themselves. The next afternoon, Princess Consort Kong received a gift from the little crown princess personally delivered by Auntie Jing. It was a beautifying ointment in an exquisite white jade box. There was also a list of medicinal ingredients, which was clearly for the elderly prince. Wang Fei was extremely touched, and replied with a lot of food and all kinds of gifts for Aunt Jing to bring back. When Louis Ran received the news, she could not help but be jealous to death. She threw around and fought in her room for the entire afternoon. She was so angry that she did not even come out to eat. The princess consort didn't spoil her either. It was up to her whether she ate or not. Louis Ran still hadn't eaten, so Wang Fei asked the kitchen to serve a few side dishes. Louis Ran would eat in her room. In the afternoon, carts of gifts were sent to the Eastern Palace. When everyone saw that it was Prince Kang's carriage, they couldn't help but be curious and secretly inquire about it. She didn't expect that the relationship between the crown prince and his wife would be so strong as soon as they came back. She heard that the crown princess and Princess Kong had a great chat yesterday and was even invited to Prince Kang's fu as a guest. Arbor slept until the sun was high in the sky. Just as she finished washing up and getting dressed, she saw Eunuch Chen run in with a face full of joy. "Crown Princess, His Majesty summons you." He was summoned so soon. The little crown princess raised her eyebrows. She had thought that she would be left out for a few more days. Heh, looks like he can't wait to see his son. "Where's the crown prince?" Sir Jojo asked. "His Highness the Crown Prince said to have you eat breakfast first. His Highness will be here in a moment." Eunuch Chen grumbled inwardly. "What breakfast? It's going to be lunch soon." The little crown princess was most likely spoiled by His Highness the Crown Prince when she opened her eyes and found fault with His Highness the Crown Prince. The 10th watch ended. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.